Welcome to the Mostly Pilot Night, Mostly. I am Graveyard, joined by my co-host Salem.
Hello.
This is episode 11 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. This is part 1 of our 4-parter on the Halloween franchise and its multiple timelines. This episode will include what has been dubbed the Thorn Timeline, which includes Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, also known as the Curse of Michael Myers. So we'll be going through discussing each movie, talking about plot synopsis, first thoughts, rewatches, lore, and all that stuff as we typically do. And we'll be giving this a rating out of 10. And our theme for this one is butcher knives. So let's go ahead and start off with Halloween 1. So the movie opens up in 1963, and we kind of start to see like a POV shot of somebody, looking through the window, seeing a guy and a girl started making out on the couch, and they see him go upstairs, and kind of goes and moves around the house a little bit, finds a clown mask on the floor inside the house, puts it on there, so we're then seeing through, kind of a mask eyes of it. We see the boyfriend leave after about a minute, and then knife. Yeah.
That's fair.
Get a knife, and we see the girl upstairs partially naked and starts to get stabbed multiple times with a bush knife, and then goes out, and then a car pulls up and mask is taken off. You see that it is a 6-year-old boy named Michael, and the parents are just staring at him, standing there with a bloody knife, going, just not saying anything, just go Michael, and kind of, then we get the theme song. And then continues on about 15 years later, and it shows a nurse and a doctor, Dr. Loomis, driving through the rain, going to a hearing to determine if Michael is going to be kind of incarcerated for the rest of his life. As they go to the asylum where he is being kept, they see a whole bunch of inmates out in their white robes wandering the park in the rainstorm. Nurse goes, they don't normally let them outside, do they? And no, not typically. Go up there, they see that there's Dr. Loomis goes up there to see what's going on. All of a sudden you see kind of through the rain and the headlights, someone in the gown kind of jump on top of the car. Nurse gets a little scared, hand comes down, smacks the window and starts grabbing her. She gets out of the car, and this person drives away. And they're kind of stuck there in the rain. And then we kind of then cut to our main character, our protagonist in the story, Laurie Strode. And she's was she carrying a pumpkin at this time when she was walking there, or she just had the keys?
No, yeah, she just had the keys, I think.
So you find out that her dad is a real estate agent, and the keys dropped off at is the house that was in the intro. She meets a young boy named Tommy that she babysits, and he's warning her, don't go in there. The boogeyman lives there. I hear the house is haunted. They start making plans then, because she's going to be babysitting for him Halloween night. That's kind of her job. Then I believe we start to see her in the classroom. No, sorry. We know that someone stole. Did we find out someone stole the mask at that point in time, or no? We just kind of start seeing the car that has.
No. We don't find out somebody stole the mask until her friend picks it.
Yeah. Okay.
And they drive past because her dad is the sheriff.
Like sheriff, yeah.
Stop to talk to the sheriff. Yeah, that was after the school.
Right, but we do see when she's walking to the school and stuff like that, like the car and the POV back, and the car has the medical field or institution symbol on it. We kind of see that every once in a while, just walking with her friends and stuff like that. Then she's in the English class. She's talking about was it Frankenstein's monster? I don't remember the story.
No, they were talking about like fate or something.
Fate, yeah. She looks out the window and she sees a guy in a white mask kind of just staring at her through, like, around the hedge or something like that. And, she looks at him, goes, teacher asks her a question, she answers, look back, he's gone. School gets out, we see Tommy being bullied by kids. He's carrying a giant pumpkin, telling them the boogeyman's going to get him. They trip him, he breaks his pumpkin.
Wah, wah.
Right. And then he starts walking, and the car kind of follows him a little bit. And then we cut to Lori meeting with her friends as they're walking home. And they're talking about like what their plans are for tonight. If their boyfriends are going to be there. One of our other friends is babysitting Lindsay, who's right down the street, saying, "Hey, you can come do it or watch it together." The other friend, played by PG Souls, says, we're planning on doing other things. And they're kind of walking. Their friends are just not really paying much attention, but she sees the same figure step out from a hedge and looking at her, but no one else sees him because they're too busy looking at their books or going through their purse looking for something. And then she says, "Do you guys see that? There's someone behind the hedge." Her friend's going around the corner. And they're like, "Oh, it's some guy. He wants to ask you out on a date." And she goes, "Oh, really?" And goes around there. There's no one there.
I don't think that she actually believed there was someone there.
She acted like she did. She was very confused.
Her friend did because she was fucking with her.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think she did.
No. So, is that when they get into the car? It's like it goes from day to like night really, really fast.
Well, it goes from day to night because, she goes home to like get ready and then, she's going to come pick her up at whatever, a later time. She changes and she comes out and she gets picked up. And yeah, it's bright daylight. And they say it's going to take about 30 minutes to get there, which is ridiculous because it's in the same neighborhood. But anyway, they do say it'll take 30 minutes. And it's bright daylight when they get in the car. And then when they're dropping her off at the place, it is like pitch black, like it's midnight. But
anyway, she goes home in her room, a phone call rings, and some like heavy breathing or chewing on the phone. She goes, "Hello, hello?" No response. I believe she looks out the window and sees the same guy through the bed sheets hanging like in her neighbor's yard at that time as well. Someone calls back, and as her friend's like, "Why'd you hang up on me? I was just eating." She's like, "You're always eating." Comes pick her up. They're driving together because they babysit the two kids. They're about in the same block area or even across the street. They're just going to they're just driving through town and they see that her friend's dad, who's a cop, they go past like a convenience store or a hardware store. They were smoking pot. They try to hide it quickly and they find out what's going on. Yeah, some guy broke in. He stole some rope, a knife, and a mask.
Right.
And just those things. It might even been the jumpsuit too.
No, the jumpsuit he got. They show that later on. Well,
no,
they don't
Donald
directly show it.
Okay, so he on his way there, Donald Pleasant's driving to Haddonfield, thinking he's going to return to Haddonfield. Sees a tow truck,
right,
and sees the garment there. And while he's looking at the garment, he's behind him, which he doesn't see. We see the car driving past him.
There's a dead body.
Yeah, there's a dead body. We saw a hand of the dead body.
It showed like his head and his torso.
Okay.
Where they had like blood on his chest.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's kind of insinuated that that's where he got his coverall from.
Yeah, from the tow truck guy. So then, that's, they're driving to the neighborhood. That's all of a sudden just turns pitch black from their drive, which daylight to pitch black. She goes to Tommy's house. Her friend goes to Lindsay's house. And, they're talking about, they're going to start, Tommy's like, "Are we going to make a jack-o'-lantern?" Which it's already trick-or-treating time. Why are you making it now? Doesn't make any sense.
It's Halloween, man.
Right. And then her friend gets a phone call from her boyfriend want to come over. She's making popcorn, spills something on her. She goes, takes off most of her clothes, goes into the laundry room, which is like a garage detached from the house. She gets trapped in there.
Right.
Pretty easily.
Yeah,
someone put a rake against the door.
Is that what it was?
Yeah, and then she had to try to get out the window.
No, that was later on. He put the rake on the house like later. Then she just locked herself in somehow.
Right. Okay.
Because the kid was able to go out there and open the door, and there was nothing.
Oh, yeah, you're right. And so she's stuck in the window, screaming for Lindsay. And the boyfriend's like, she, comes back in. She got stuck in the window, huh?
Yeah.
So then she calls over to Tommy's house where Laurie Strode is and say, "Hey, can Lindsay come there?" Whoever was coming over, was it Bob? Might have been Bob. I don't remember boyfriend's name off the top of my head.
I think Bob was.
Yeah, Bob was PJ Souls. Yeah.
The blonde.
We never saw this boyfriend of Nancy. She asks Lindsay, "Hey, do you want to go watch movies with Tommy Doyle?" She says, "Okay." So she goes over there, drops her off, and then she goes into her car, and it's really, really foggy in her car. She tries using the windshield wipers, wipe from the inside, and then Michael comes from the back, starts strangling her, and eventually slices her throat, and she dies. She gets car horn for a while, and he takes her off. So Tommy and Lindsay are at their house with the Girl Scout Jamie, Laurie Strode, and Tommy's trying to scare Lindsay by hiding behind the curtain, going, "Lindsay." She couldn't find him behind the curtain, and then she's
like 5 years old,
right? He looks out the window, sees the boogeyman, which he doesn't believe.
The shape.
The shape, yes. PJ Souls' character and her boyfriend Bob go over to Lindsay's house, thinking that they're going to be Nancy and her boyfriend there. None of the lights are on. They decide to go ahead and have sex in the parents' bedroom. About a minute later, they get done, and
it's fair. They're
right,
teenagers.
Yep. And Bob's like, "Do you want a beer?" "Yeah, go get me a beer." So Bob goes downstairs, starts raiding the fridge for beer. Hears a noise in the cabinet, peers up, and he gets picked up by the neck, stabbed all the way through himself into the cabinet door, and is pinned there. And that's when we get our first kind of iconic head tilt of Michael Myers after a kill. Then we go back to PJ's.
I don't think the knife is strong enough to hold up a human body. I'm pretty sure that would not work.
Correct. Unless he was like 50 pounds.
Well, yeah. He's a child, maybe.
Right. So then the door opens, and it's a sheet, a guy wearing a sheet with glasses over it. And like what you see, shows her tits, and then she starts calling.
It's a politically correct podcast. You got to say breasts.
Breasts, yes. Goes in, calls Laurie, and she started getting strangled with the phone cord, and Laurie's like, "Oh, your phone calls and your obscene sounds, stuff like that's not gonna get to me." And then something we should mention also, as Dr. Loomis is going to town, he stops by the cemetery to see where the sister was killed. We find out, it's Michael's sister that was killed in the beginning. And Colin talking to the groundskeeper, her tombstone was stolen. So,
damn kids.
Yeah, damn kids. meanwhile, then we come back to, Lori and Tommy and Lindsay. They finally made their jack-o'-lantern, start howling as carrying it around. And then, don't really do much anything else. They thought to see the lights on, but then the lights were off across the street at Lindsay's house. So she goes to investigate because she hasn't heard from her friends for a while. It's like, when are they going to come get, Lindsay, right? She goes over there, and what the first thing does, she goes. Does she go upstairs first, or does she go into the kitchen first?
Well, she went in the kitchen first, but his body wasn't there.
Right. So then she goes upstairs and sees that her friend's dead on the bed with Judith Meyer's headstone there. And then, she goes, turns around, then Bob he's somehow in the closet and swings.
Right. Yeah, swings from the ceiling. Right.
From the ceiling. Scares her. And then she's terrified. And
she sees somebody else in a cabinet or something.
Yeah. Nancy's in the cabinet with her.
Right.
Throat slices. We have to have everyone find the bodies at the, in the same sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Then she's kind of against the wall, and really good play of lighting is, so you see a dark room behind her, and then you see the light kind of go on half the white mask. She gets sliced in the arm, and then she kind of falls down the stairs from there. So, she gets up. And he slowly starts walking down the stairs. She runs back to Tommy's house, tries to get the keys, can't get the keys. Where are the keys? The keys! And the kids open the door. She tells them, go run and hide. And during all this, Dr. Loomis is with the sheriff. He's kind of sitting out at the Myers house, waiting for him to come back. They said, he's already been here because he's eaten. And there's a dead dog. So, yes. Does the dog die in the movie? The answer is yes. And get eaten.
Apparently.
Yeah. So they realize he wasn't coming back. So they kind of start roaming the neighborhood a little bit, looking for him. So, they realize that he's in the house. She goes and takes the kids, hides them somewhere. So you go hide, puts them in the closet and locks it. He attacks her again, she stabs him in the neck with a knitting needle. And then he gets up and she tells the kids to go run and get help. So then they go running, screaming through the neighborhood. Dr. Loomis hears them, starts to follow him. She's traps herself in a closet with the wood panel doors.
She locks herself in, trying to hide, and then she's hysterically screaming and mumbling under her breath. Of course he's gonna find her.
Right. And he starts breaking slowly through the wood door, turns the light on and off a few times for good measure.
Yeah.
She takes a wire hanger, starts to undo it, stabs him in the eye.
Perfect aim.
Yeah, and kind of falls down. Dr. Loomis is then, she thinks, he's dead. I got him. Yay. And so she starts to get up, slowly leave. And she starts then getting choked out. But Dr. Loomis is there, comes up, she manages to take off his mask so we see his face ever so slightly. As he's putting it back on, he gets shot once by Dr. Loomis. And Dr. Loomis goes in the room. He's just standing there, kind of just breathing heavily. And then he shoots him 5 more times till he stumbles out onto the balcony and onto the ground. And then Lori goes, "Was that the Boogeyman?" He goes, "As a matter of fact, it was." Look down, and the body's gone. And then the John Carpenter theme song starts playing. So, for me, first thoughts on this, I was introduced to the Halloween franchise as a whole, I would say, with the 96 with Chris and Michael Myers. I was 12, didn't realize what it was. I think I knew of Halloween. I just never realized this wasn't the first one.
That was the first one you watched?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I was, like I said, someone rented it, and I realized, like, wait, there's more? So then I went back and watched the rest of them. But on the first watch, seeing it, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I thought it was suspenseful. I think it was pretty well done. Like I said, I was just entering my foray into horror movies at that point in time. What was your first thoughts when you saw this?
I honestly I don't remember the first time I saw it. I was a kid. I know that. So this is probably like, I don't know, mid to late 80s when I watched it. I mean, at that time, I had seen a lot of like slasher movies. So at that point, I just was like, okay, yeah, it's good. It's a good slasher movie. At that point, I did not understand it was like the first one. I mean, not the first one, but the first, I guess, arguably the first modern one.
Yeah, the start of the slashers.
Right. Yeah. So at that time, I had no idea because I had already seen a bunch of really bad ones before that point, and I knew it was one of the better ones, but I had no idea it was like the original one.
Yeah, kind of brought slashers in the mainstream.
Right. Yeah, I was like, 9.
Right.
I didn't know what good movies were back then. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember having a big reaction to it at the time.
What about your rewatch of it? How often do you rewatch this, if at all?
I mean, I've seen it a few times. It's not like a movie I make a point to watch, every so often or anything. But I mean, I've probably seen it, I don't know, 5-6 times in my life. Okay. So I mean, a few times I've seen it from that's from front, from beginning to end.
Right.
I've seen bits and pieces of it a lot more than that because it's on, TV and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Or around this time of year, it's on TV and stuff that all the time.
Right. I mean, I know I mentioned this before, but this is something I rewatch every October. This entire franchise.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's interesting. And watching it now, I mean, obviously, I know it was one of the very first ones. So I watch it now, and you can see a lot of the other movies and franchises that pulled a lot of elements from the movie. Mm-hmm. And you can see that. And, you can see it plain as day now. Again, when I was a kid, I didn't understand that. But,
right.
Now you can see it, and you can see how this originated a lot of other stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that stuff now, especially as you watch more and more movies, more, exposed to more and more movies and different franchises and just in general, and then go back and watch the originals, and you can see little bits and pieces that they pulled out of it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's always a rewatch for me. I enjoy this a lot. It's one of my favorite franchises, probably my second favorite franchise behind Evil Dead.
Now, do you think this is like the first franchise where they had like, where the villain is stopped and then he just like keeps getting up and keeps going?
Yeah, because our slashers essentially before this were arguably Texas Chainsaw. Black Christmas is considered one of the first slashers, but realistically, Psycho is arguably the first slasher.
Right.
But yeah, this is probably the first supernatural, unstoppable slasher, I would say.
Right. It's the first one, I mean, chronologically speaking, that I remember, just being like, a force that you can't stop, no matter what you do, he keeps coming back kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's getting into the lore of this, we don't know much about him other than he is a guy, but can get, stabbed with a sewing needle. He can get stabbed in the eye and shot 6 times and and just get up. So, for the lore wise, it was a good start of a groundwork of it. Like, not much background other than 15 years ago, he killed his sister. Now he killed tow truck driver, and 3 more people and a dog. So his body count wasn't really high.
Right.
But you kind of lay the groundwork of what things were to come is, okay, he's not just a guy. There's either that, here's like that disease where you can't really feel pain. So it has good groundwork for it. With the lore, though, we're also going to discuss the bad child psychologist called Dr. Loomis.
Now, Dr. Loomis, at best, is the worst child psychologist I've ever seen. That's at his best. Now, I'll get into a couple other conspiracy theories that I have about this in a moment. But at worst, if you're just going at this film at face value, he is a horrible child psychologist. Like, a 6-year-old kid, murders his sister. Obviously, some weird, sexual reaction stuff happening there, right?
Yeah.
Like, he sees her, like, making out with her boyfriend, and the first thing that pops into his head is murder. So something bad probably happened there. Now, we're probably talking a history of sexual assault of some kind, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't just happen for no reason. So we're probably talking he was, like, molested or assaulted or in some way, shape, or form for that kind of reaction to happen. Now, he murders his sister, and then goes catatonic, essentially. Now, right. Dr. Loomis says multiple times during the course of this movie and the subsequent movies that he never moved, he never spoke, he never did anything at all while he was in the mental institution for 15 years.
Right.
He never did anything.
Well, 5 years he tried to reason with him, 10 years he tried to keep him locked up.
Right. So if he didn't move, didn't talk, didn't interact with his environment at all, how can you make the decision that he's pure evil? Because he says that. He says he's just pure evil.
He has the darkest eyes.
Right. Yeah, he's like, I saw it in his eyes. Really? You're a fucking psychologist, dude. You went to how many years of fucking school and you're using I see it in his eyes as a fucking excuse to murder someone?
Mm-hmm.
It's disturbing. And that's, again, this is the best case scenario. This is if you just follow the movie as it is.
Right.
Like, this guy is just straight up, that's a bad kid. We need to murder him. Like, not like, we need to bring him back in. He needs to be, institutionalized. We need to try to work on him more to try to break through to him. We need to, get him under control so we can put him back to where he can get the help he needs. No. None of that. Murder. It's just murder. There's no attempt at capture. There's no attempt at rehabilitation. It's just murder. Like I said, this guy is the worst psychologist I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And again, that is the mild version. If you're going just by the event, if you want me to get into the rest of it, I will. Do you want to go into some other stuff first?
Is it with the first movie? You want to kind of go with it with each movie as it progresses?
Well, because again, in this movie, I can easily, give you what I believe actually probably happened.
We can, or if you want to do a kind of a last minute roundup, then the whole topic, then overall that we see in this Thorn timeline, the insanity of Dr. Loomis. You want me to
do it at the very end?
Yeah.
Okay.
The insanity of Dr. Loomis.
Okay, so we'll keep my conspiracy theories for the end.
Yeah.
But as I said, at best, Dr. Loomis is a terrible, terrible psychologist who, instead of trying to help his patients, he's the one that decides whether they live or die and whether they're worth saving or not. And he decides that he's going to be the executioner to do so. And then tries to seek out and hunt out this person and then shoot him. And ultimately, at the end, attempt to kill him. But obviously we see him leave, so he doesn't succeed, but that is his goal before he even knows what happened, before he even knows he hurt anyone else. His goal is to kill him.
Right. He was choking Lori. He killed his sister 15 years ago. He killed the tow driver, and he learned to drive pretty well for never being taught the asylum.
Again, there's obviously more to this.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get into it later.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
All right. So highlights for me is just the movie. We say this a lot, but the movie as a whole, like, you read the documentaries, you listen to documentaries, you watch documentaries, you hear all the stuff of how it's such a low budget stuff that everyone was family. And, yes, there are scenes of them just walking for 5 minutes straight and you cut at any time and just padding for the runtime. But for the budget they had and the story, it was very craftily done. It's a well put together movie. Oh yeah, the highlight, like I said, is just how well together this movie really was. And I think you can appreciate it more knowing of it being the pioneer for a lot of this stuff.
I mean, that's the highlight is you look at it, and again, you watch it. If you've seen a lot of other slashers and you watch it, kind of not knowing the history of it, it just seems like another slasher, right? A well-made one, yeah, but it just seems like another slasher. But when you realize that this was the one that originated a lot of this stuff, like a lot of the tropes that slasher movies follow came from this movie,
Yeah.
So like this was the original one, but even minus all that kind of stuff, there's still a lot of interesting stuff that they did here. Yeah, I mean, they had a low budget, but there's a lot of interesting like shots in the way they did things. You mentioned how they did the lighting and stuff earlier. That was a really cool shot when they did that.
Oh, that was an amazing shot.
Right. There was also another really cool shot where the kid like falls on the pumpkin and it squishes and all that.
Yeah.
Like they literally, that kid like walks back to the school, walks through the schoolyard, ends up back on the street. And then the car comes up to him, and it's one whole big continuous shot.
Yeah, just one continuous shot.
Yeah, it's one. The kid walks back, walks through the schoolyard, ends up on the other side of the street, and then walks back. But the camera comes around that whole side of the bush, and then follows the kid down the street. And there's like further cues. I mean, for the kid, it speaks a lot about the kid and acting. He wasn't a great actor, but at least he can follow some cues, right?
Right.
And then the car comes up to him and everything. It just interesting shots, well done shots. I mean, it's John Carpenter, so of course it's, interesting stuff. But this is pretty early in his career. He only made a movie or two before this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still early in his career. He's still, perfecting his craft, but it's still, you can see, there's a little bit more to it, a little bit more substance to it than all the slashers that come afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, I do like that they watch The Thing from Another World in Halloween. It was like a foreshadowing of him redoing The Thing.
Right. Yeah. There was 3 movies in the, the 3 movies that because they already talked earlier was like, horror movie dementia night or something, whatever it was.
Yeah.
There was supposed to be 3 movies, and the 3 movies were, The Thing from Another Planet, which interestingly enough, John Carpenter would later remake, like not just 4 years?
4 years later. Yeah.
And it was Forbidden Planet.
Yes.
And then the third one, we don't get to see what the third one was until the second movie. You know what the third one was?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Night of the Living Dead. It's always the movie that they're put on whenever they watch anything on TV because it's technically open source.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay to put it in your movie. But yeah, that was the third one. If you remember the old man that was sleeping when he was trying to get his sandwich.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Was watching. That was the third one of the horror movie dementia marathon or whatever.
I mean, that's a good marathon though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in 1978, yeah. That was as good as it gets.
All right. So low points. I'm going to be very nitpicky for this. It is the long shots of them walking, like 3 or 4 houses down, and I think Riff Tracks made it pretty funny. Like when they did this movie, they go and cut. No, now cut here. Come on. So
yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, I think that's still interesting though. It's something you don't normally see, and normally in slasher movies, it's like cut. They're like they're trying to like bang out what little story they have, pretty quickly. And it's interestingly enough. I mean, this is again in the very early days of the slasher, but it's interesting to see, a different kind of take on it. Again, this is John Carpenter making a slasher, so it's going to be a slightly different take on it. But
right,
yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. I like it because it's a little bit different outside of that.
Now, would you consider all those long shots of just Michael watching them, and that's more unnerving? That's the only thing I can see him keeping it in there for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unnerving. It's just supposed to build suspense. It's just supposed to kind of twang that that wire that's holding you in place.
Yeah. What about low points for you?
Low point. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'd call the whole Dr. Loomis thing a low point. It's just a ridiculous point. I mean, it's just, to me, like every time I watch it, I'm just like, how is this guy a psychologist? How is anybody listening to this guy? But now I just see it as funny. I mean, now it's just interesting. So I guess it was originally a low point. Now I see it as an interesting point to spin off conspiracy theories off of.
But I mean, would you consider him being the trope of the ultimate hunter, knowing the antagonist very well that we see in other franchises going forward, though?
I mean, it's funny that he's like, I'm the one who knows him best, even though like even said he didn't talk, he didn't move, he didn't react to his environment in 15 years. So like he knows as much about him as I do, right?
Yeah,
and he's still trying to pretend like he's an expert.
I mean,
I guess, sure, that'll be.
It's fair, but I mean, like it's a trope. You always have that one person like, I know the evil. I've been studying it for years, and they like only appear in one movie, yet he's in 5.
Right.
So, all right. So, butcher knives out of 10. I am giving this one 10. Absolutely. 100%.
What a shock!
I know, right? I love this movie. There's no denying that. What about you?
I mean, it is a great movie. I mean, it is a very well made slasher. I mean, it's like I said, one of the original slashers. So, I will give it 9 butcher knives out of 10.
Okay.
The reason I give it 9 is just because slashers aren't my favorite kind of movie, but it's still a great movie.
That's fair. All right, so you want to take us into Halloween 2?
Yes. Halloween 2. Halloween 2 basically starts off at the very end of Halloween 1. It actually recaps the last 5 minutes of the movie. And it shows him getting shot by Dr. Loomis. He falls out the window, he lands in the front yard, and then he gets up and runs away. And then the movie just keeps going from there. Laurie Strode gets taken by ambulance to the hospital. Where she's joined by the last starfighter to keep her company. I guess he immediately takes a liking to her, I guess. And so they go. So they're going off to the hospital. And then it shows, Michael kind of wandering through the neighborhood. There's a weird scene of the old couple where she's making him a sandwich and he's sleeping, watching TV. So she goes in the other room to wake him up, and she leaves the knife on the counter, and he takes the knife and he leaves. Which I think is an interesting point because it kind of shows that he doesn't necessarily have to kill everyone he comes in contact with.
But what's he do after he gets that knife?
Well, yeah. But again, we're going into, he obviously has some kind of sexual issue, right?
Yeah.
So whenever he sees anything that attracts him, he has to murder it.
Right, because he goes to that other woman's house. Right,
yeah. He goes to the other woman's house. Who he spots through the window, I think, right?
Right.
And he goes over to her house and, he does his typical lurking around, pops out and stabs her. And that scene where he stabs her is kind of interesting. It's the first scene where we really see his eyes. Because that's really the only kill in that movie too, because I was looking for it. Because that one is just kind of weird because the camera angle, the way that they zoom in and the lighting, you plainly see his eyes sticking out of the mask.
Yeah.
They got that crazed look to him. But throughout the rest of the movie and through almost all the rest of these movies, his eyes are always in shadow.
Right. That's the darkest eyes.
Right. But the funny thing is in Halloween 1, one of his eyes was stabbed out with the hanger, right?
Yep.
And they show that when she pulls the mask off and we see him for that second or whatever. His eye is just a bloody hole, right? I mean, there's no eye there. So it's interesting that his eye is now back.
Yes.
Anyway, so he's killing his way kind of through the neighborhood.
Yep.
And then Dr. Loomis, he goes with to the hospital to try to, I guess find out. Well, they were looking for Michael, but he ends up going to the hospital to see what happens. To Laurie, they're looking around for him, obviously, because he's missing. They shot him and he's gone. He screams at the cop, I shot him 6 times. I swear he says it 10 times, screaming at the car. And he jumps in the car and they're driving around the neighborhood looking for him. Laurie goes to the hospital. There's a lot of scenes of the hospital.
Yeah.
Of just nurses and doctors and, just walking, room to room and lots of weird, jump scares of stuff of the nurse call button. And they use that nurse call jump scare at least 3 times.
Well, I mean, if it works, right?
I guess. I've never seen a nurse call me that loud. But again, I wasn't in a hospital. Well, technically I was in a hospital in 1978, but I don't remember it.
Why not?
Because I was being born at the time.
Oh, I don't remember 1978 at all.
Imagine that. I guess maybe. To me, it looked like it wasn't really a hospital. It looked like a warehouse that they like converted into a hospital for the movie, which they probably did.
Yeah, it's fair.
So Loomis is like, driving around the city with the sheriff, like trying to find him. Lori goes to the hospital. They're saying that she got stabbed like near her heart, which didn't really happen. But again, they're just doing it to put her in there for some reason. They just kind of drug her up, and then she's just kind of in that bed for like the next like hour.
Yep.
Right? She's just like, occasionally somebody will go and like visit her, like, creepy Last Starfighter guy goes and looks at her a bunch of times. And the nurse that looks at her a couple times, and that's like it. She's, for a large part of this movie, she's just like not in it. She's just kind of drugged out, even though she was the main character in the first one. Interesting. So you get the creepy dude watching her. Michael eventually, kind of creeps through the neighborhood, eventually makes it to the hospital. Then the first person he kills is like the security guard guy who's like, looking through the storeroom because they heard a noise, even though you like clearly see him moving around on the monitors, but he's not watching the monitors.
Right.
So he goes in the storage room. He kills the security guard that was trying to find him. They just kind of makes his way through the hospital. He kills, I want to say, I know there's the one nurse who we don't see right now, but we find out that he killed her later.
Yeah.
And then there was the nurse who decided to go in the hot tub.
Yeah.
With the other paramedic guy. And so the paramedic guy and her, right? Yeah. So the paramedic guy gets killed, and then she gets like burned alive / drowned in the jacuzzi.
Fantastic scene. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's like, it's an interesting scene because it's just like all this like latex like dripping off of her face, like trying to look like it's like 3rd degree burns, but like the water is only like 120 degrees. Like, right. It's not that hot, but
it's cold out there. It's gonna get cold in here.
Right. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, she's supposed to be like the night nurse. She's the only one in this whole ward.
She's the night nurse for the maternity ward.
Right. And then she's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go, bone my boyfriend on the side,
We'll have the door open. You're not going to hear kids screaming.
Yeah. Dear God. The door wasn't even open.
No.
It was
There's no way the hot tub was on the same floor. Let's face it. It was in the basement. The irresponsibleness of everyone in this movie is ridiculous. Like, the paramedics aren't working. The doctor was like, literally, they said in the beginning of the movie he was drunk because he was drunk at his country club. They had to call him in, so he's drunk. The one nurse is late, and then she's obviously just like trying to mess around with her boyfriend the whole shift. Everybody is just bad at this. The security guard even like left and like gave his radio to the other nurse. Yeah, and
then somehow he had another radio anyway. And then was talking to her over the radio. Like, I don't know how the writer missed that one.
But it never worked. Like, she kept switching the knobs.
Right. But, like, he clearly gave her the radio. Like, here, listen to this while I'm going to go out for a smoke or whatever he said. And then he had another one.
Uh-huh.
Like, he clearly gave her the radio to say, watch this while I'm gone. And then he had one anyway.
Yes.
It was weird. Anyway. So they both end up getting killed. Of course, Michael cuts all the phone lines. And of course, he slashes all the tires for all the cars in the parking lot. So the one nurse that eventually does, like, see dead people and realize what is going on and tries to escape, goes to a car, and of course, all the tires are flat. And she can't get out. And I believe, who sent her out? I think it was it Loomis? Did he finally show up?
No. Because Loomis, we see all the commotion, we saw the aftermath, we see the sheriff, going, hey, it's Annie that, oh dear God, and so someone else takes him. They go to the school. There's a break-in at the school.
Oh, right. Okay. And that's when the marshal comes, right?
Yeah. And that Dr. Loomis has to come back. He's been called back under martial law. They go to the school, and the guy has the flashlight on the fully lit room.
Right.
Look here.
Oh, yeah, he's a cop.
Pictures. Look here, Sam Hine.
Right.
And there's a knife through the picture of the sister. Yeah. So,
right.
So they realize, that, and that the nurse comes back in the first one and goes, Laurie Strode, that's Michael Myers' sister.
Right. Yeah. Conveniently.
Right.
As they're on their way back to the hospital.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, that's Laurie Strode was his sister. They sealed the records, and he's like, "Well, I've been, his doctor for 15 years. How come I didn't find out about it? Oh, this was a hidden file."
Right. So that's where he pulls out his gun, does a warning shot to the marshal, and then the marshal then he forces him to the hospital.
Right.
Yeah.
So he gets back. In the meantime, before he gets there, like, the last Starfighter finds the other nurse that was dead. And she is like on the surgery table, like buckled down, and she apparently got like an IV stuck in her arm, and so all her blood drained out all over the floor.
Yep.
And he just slips on the blood, falls down, and then smashes his head and apparently dies. They don't really focus on that he's dead. They just focus on like he got knocked out or something, right? But he's gone for the whole rest of the movie. So apparently...
No, not the whole rest. He comes back.
No. Does he?
Yeah. Because Laurie comes out of sedation, she didn't take her pills. Michael Myers is going around trying to find her. He goes to stab her in her bed, and it's pillows. She runs out to the cars. Laurie does, realizing all the tires are slashed, and she hides in one of the cars. And someone
one of the nurses found out all the tires were slashed. She just ran out there to hide in one of them.
Right. But yeah, she saw that too, but she went out there to hide. But the guy comes back and happens to go into the car that Laurie's in.
Oh, that's right. And he was all like, and he was all like
concussed.
dazed and shit.
He's concussed, and then he falls forward on the horn, alerting Michael that Laurie's outside.
Gotcha. Yes. Yeah. So then he comes out, and Loomis comes, and they go in the hospital as Laurie's like trying to crawl into the hospital. It's because she couldn't scream before they got in. So of course, as soon as they close the door, she can scream and they can hear her. So she gets up, she gets to the door, she starts screaming. They eventually do hear her. And then they come and they open the door and they bring her in. So it's Loomis, the nurse, and the cop.
Yeah.
And then they all come in, and it's pretty funny because Michael just walks through the window.
He walks through
the glass completely. Of the door.
Yeah.
Like, if it was that easy to break, why didn't she just... like, her banging on it should have broken it.
Correct.
Like, literally, with the force that Michael walked into it, her banging on it should have broke that. Anyway. So he tries... he shoots him a bunch of times, and he falls down. Cop is like, oh, he must be dead. And he keeps telling him to stay away from the body.
Get away from him.
Yeah, and he keeps going near it. And, of course, he gets his throat slashed.
Yeah.
So then, he tells the nurse to go, get help or whatever. And then, of course, Michael's chasing Laurie and the doctor.
Well, he kills the nurse with a scalpel enough to lift her in the air.
Right.
She's the one that found the slashed tires.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, they're chasing him through the hospital. They end up in a surgery room. And they're like, of course, Loomis has shot at him a bunch of times and it's having zero effect. And of course, he gives the gun to Laurie because he got stabbed and he's like hurt at this point. So he gives the gun to Laurie, and her perfect aim again, shoots twice, shoots out both of his eyes.
Right.
Right. Ding, ding. Perfect shots. So he can't see, and he's just like slashing wildly. So they're like making noises, trying to get him to like move around the room. And so they end up like opening up all these valves on tanks, like oxygen and ether, and
to lure him to the other side to get away from each other.
Right. Yeah. So Laurie ends up getting out of the room, and then Dr. Loomis decides to sacrifice himself by, banging on the thing to get Michael to come over by him. And then as soon as Michael comes over by him, he lights a lighter, and there's a big explosion.
Yes.
And they show Michael walk out on fire and fall down. And then, like, the whole closing credits of the movie is, like, his face burning.
To Mr. Sandman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then show it burning for quite a while. It's like minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what were your first thoughts on when you seen this? I don't know if you recall when you watched Halloween 2, when you realized there was a Halloween 2 in the franchise.
I believe I watched it around the same time as I watched the first one. And this one, I believe I've only seen twice because I saw it, I saw it around this time period. And then again, when I was trying to do it was in the late 90s when I was trying to like rewatch all the franchises or where they were up to that point. And I know I watched it again then.
So what were your first thoughts? And then
so I think this will be the third time I've seen it in total. I mean, it's all right. I mean, it's weird that they kind of shift the focus. I mean, Laurie Strode seemed kind of, confident and strong-ish in the first one.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously she was screaming, but at least she was capable. In this one, she just kind of seems like it like took her power away almost. So where she was just like, kind of present and just a prize to be moved around. Like she doesn't defend herself really at all. I mean, obviously she does the perfect 2 shots, but that's really the only thing she does.
Yeah.
The rest of the time she's just like incoherent and like babbling, out of like shock or fear, whatever it is. And if she's really in shock or fear that much, I mean, these doctors pretty much just leave her alone the whole time. I mean, it's shocking how like irresponsible this hospital is. There's like, 4 people working in this entire hospital and all of them are fuck ups.
Yep. Like
all of them are. I mean, everybody's, a complete idiot. And like, there's no like emergency room staff, apparently. There's no like, night janitors. There's only like 4 people in this whole building.
Right.
They're all dead and they all leave all the light. Well, I mean, the power got knocked out.
Yeah. I mean,
there was another death in there where I think he threw the guy into the power, or is that the 4th?
That's the 4th one.
It's the 4th one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right. Do you think it's a worthy rewatch, though?
Yeah. I mean, if you're watching the first one, yeah, you should watch this one again. Because it pretty much takes place
the same night.
I mean, it was made close-ish to the first one. I mean,
2 years. 2 years.
Yeah. It was made like 2 years later. And it's still written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, the same people who wrote the first one.
Right.
Obviously, John Carpenter did not direct this one, but he was very much involved. Like, he wrote and produced it. He just didn't direct it. So it's still very much his work, his world, right? So yeah, if you're going to watch the first one, you should definitely watch the second one. They kind of go in.
Right. And it's something we've discussed before. When we talk about sequels, I consider it to be a must watch when you watch the first one. It's the same night.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, my first thought, I'm like, it's a pretty good follow up. And on the rewatches, like I said, I rewatch this all the time. It is a good successor. Not as good as the first one, but it is pretty good. And for, still being the template for slashers, we see something that we don't really get in slashers, though, is the final girl, in this case, Laurie, is in the second one and also lives through it.
Right. Yeah, that's very rare.
Very rare.
Right.
And this is the template. So
yeah, and here's the thing, and here's the reason why I think a lot of slashers took the wrong information from this. They took the right from the first, and they took the wrong from the second. Is that so many other slashers later on? Because in the first one, he either strangles people or he stabs people with a knife. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? He did just to the point, just wants them dead, right? This one is where we start getting into the wacky kills, right? We start getting into, the nurse dies from the IV being stuck in her. The guy gets, stabbed in the eye with the doctor gets stabbed in the eye with the syringe, right?
Right.
There's a boiling jacuzzi, she gets drowned and burned in the jacuzzi at the same time. We start seeing the goofy kills in this one.
Well, I mean, yeah. So we have the doctor killed off screen. We have the nurse killed off screen. We really don't see much of Bud getting killed. It's just through the frosty glass.
Right.
So a lot of kills, even though they're wacky, the wackiest ones, we don't really see.
Right. Well, I mean, you do see him, jabbing somebody in the eye with the syringe. the one nurse when she comes
but
in.
like the doctor had like a bunch of needles come out of his face.
Right, he just had the one in his eye, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's fair. He was off screen.
Yeah, which is surprising.
But yeah, the whole like, the guy sitting in the chair being dead, and people don't realize he's dead till they turn the chair around. Like the goofy kills with like the wacky improvised weaponry, like all this, the kind of cheesy stuff we see in slashers later on. This is, I think, the dawning of that.
I wonder if it has to do with the fact that Friday the 13th had come out by now, and they were going off the template of Halloween and had more over the top kills, so they responded back to it.
I'm pretty sure they did, and I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And I get a lot of it is just effects people that want to show off the kind of effects that they can do.
Oh, absolutely.
I get that. I appreciate that, and I salute that. But I'm saying that a lot of these slasher movies, like that's all they're about, is these wacky, goofy kills.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, it culminated in like Final Destination, when that's literally the entire movie. That's the plot of the movie, is wacky kills, right? That's like everything revolves around that.
Yes.
But I mean, yeah, things leading up to that point is just all these franchises, just all these wacky kills, goofy improvised weapons, or silly ways of dying, or goofy stuff like that. Like, I think this is like the template, like you said, this around this time period is when people started figuring out, hey, we need to kill people as wacky and interesting as possible.
It was the 80s. You had to.
Yeah. But a lot of the movies after this point, that's all they concentrate on.
Yeah.
They skimped on everything else, and that's all they focus on.
Right. So let's obviously get into the biggest lore of this, of the revelation that Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' sister. Now.
Right. And what a stretch that is.
Well, okay, so she's 17.
Right.
And the original murders happened 15 years before that.
Right.
She was alive when in
1960. She would have been, sure, yeah.
1963, yes. So the idea that the bad child psychologist had no idea that a 2-year-old daughter existed, a 2-year-old sister existed of his patient. And then we have flashbacks of her visiting him in the asylum, like while she's in
that movie.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Unless it was, because I know there's 2 different versions of the movie. I know there was the movie that he filmed a bunch of extra stuff for TV, but in this one, there's no flashbacks of her going to the asylum. I don't think.
I distinctly remember that after the revelation came, that while she was unconscious, that she had that.
You might be right.
So, I mean, lore-wise, though, now
I remember a girl in a dress.
Yeah.
So that.
So lore-wise, we kind of took out the mystery, the suspense, the randomness that was the first movie, and we gave it a reason.
He had a reason in the first one. That's the thing. Like, you didn't need to give him a reason. He already had a reason. And that what was the first thing that he did when he got out of the hospital, right? What was his main focus?
To go home.
Right. He got home. Who was the first person he saw after he got home?
Laurie Strode.
Because she put the key under the front door.
Right.
She came up to his door. She advertised herself to him. And after that point, he started stalking her through the whole movie. He was following her in the car the whole time. Typical serial killer behavior. He focused on her, hyper focused on her, was obsessed with her, just like he was obsessed with his sister. Anything that attracts him or makes him sexually excited, he has to kill. That's like his whole focus. So he already had a focus. So because she got away, he could have just went after her and killed her. I don't think the whole sister angle is needed at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like later on, I understand, there's, we need more, meat for like 4, 5, and 6 to latch onto after Laurie is no longer part of the story.
Right.
But in this one, I didn't see the reason why. Like why I didn't understand why they needed to add that in there. And then they added like, oh, he tried to kill his whole family. We saw in the first one, he walked out the front door with the bloody knife to his parents and made no move to hurt them.
right
at all.
And he would have a 2-year-old sister there as well that he did nothing to.
Right, and he just stood there staring forward with the knife in his hand, and his parents walked up to him, were able to cuddle him and take the knife away. Oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? He never tried to attack them or kill them at all. They tried to add more to the movie that wasn't in the first one at all.
So you find
again, I just thought it was a cheap reason. They didn't need to put that in there. I don't know why they did.
Yeah. All right.
I guess to give a definitive, solid foundation, concrete reason why, because they can't understand just the first girl he saw.
Yeah. I mean, because that was the undertone, which people probably didn't catch on, so they gave it a more obvious thing of.
I get that. I mean, I do listen to a lot of true crime and stuff, so I understand how serial killers hyper focus on things, and it doesn't. They'll keep going after the same person, as long as they don't get caught. So
do you think it's the hyper focus, or do you think it's the fact that, he just wanted to be home and left alone, and she might be someone to disturb his home that he just wanted to be at?
Well, that's part of it. I think that was his main focus, is he wanted to get home, and he did that anything to get there. He even killed that other guy to get there. And he was willing to kill the nurse and the doctor in that car to get the car so he could get home. He was doing anything to get home. He just wanted to get out of that place.
Right.
My conspiracy theory will play more into this and the reasons why later. But just focusing on what the movie says is, he wanted to get home. He got home. Now he sees that his home is dilapidated and destroyed, right? He eats whatever, the dead dog or whatever they say he ate. They didn't show it. They just talked.
Yeah.
And then the first thing that comes up to his door is this young woman. And as we've seen, especially in the first one, it's anything that he sees as an attraction, a sexual attraction to him, he has to kill it. Whatever happened to him, right? Whatever is going on in his brain, and in the first movie, at least, that is what he does. That's why he kills all the other girls, right? Is because, they're doing sexy stuff.
Right.
Right? Or he's attracted to them in some way, so he has to kill them. The guys he only kills because they're in the way.
Yeah.
They're in the way of him getting to the girls, so he has to kill them. And he just kind of blatantly kills them. He doesn't, really get into it. Whereas the women, he usually stages them or, whatever. He does something interesting, like he did the tombstone thing with the one, because obviously he's moving bodies around because he moved the other one in the closet. Goofy, we don't know what he's doing when the camera's not on him, right? But there's obviously some kind of weird sexual perversion stuff going on here.
Right.
And the first one that he sees that comes up to his door, in his mind, she could be again, twisted serial killer mind, she comes up to the door, she's inviting him in. Right?
Yeah.
So, of course, if she's inviting me, now I'm going to hyper focus on her and I'm going to follow her around. He follows her to school. He's standing outside watching her in school. He's following her in the car. Whenever they're driving, his car is literally following them everywhere they go. And he's walking behind him while those long walking shots, he's watching them the entire time.
Right.
He's hyper focusing on her. He needs to get again. If you want to put in that, is the daughter, you want to add more, I just don't think it was needed. I think the reason that he wanted to hunt her and kill her was already there. I don't think it needed.
Right. But this lore does play a bigger part through the rest of this Thorn timeline, though.
Yes, it does.
So, all right.
I'm going to say, and this one in particular, I'm not, the rest of them, obviously the rest of them would not exist if this was not the truth, right? If this wasn't actually his sister. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this one, I don't think they needed it.
Fair enough. Well, but what are highlights for you in this?
Highlights in this one. I liked how it was kind of focused on the hospital. Almost the whole movie happens in this hospital. It's kind of interesting when they kind of just focus on one building.
Right.
For most of the movie, right? So it's you get to see all these different places in the movie, you get to see the same characters doing the same, hallways and stuff like that. I like the way that they did that. Again, this was probably not a hospital because it didn't really appear to be a hospital, but
it just seemed like the way it was staffed and it acted like it was a clinic. not a hospital.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, for me, highlights are, like that they took a movie that was 2 years later and they made it the same night, which we don't see often. You know, that we have it years apart between movies and it's the same night. You know, it's the night he came home still, or whatever the tagline was, right?
Right.
Because the first one's the night he came home. And I like Dr. Loomis, that you start seeing more of his madness in this. You know, he was mad in the first one, but he's just continuing to spiral, as we'll discuss, as the recap of your conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But it's just seemed more, you know, into his madness.
Right. Yeah.
What about low points for you?
Low points, again, it's the wacky kills. I mean, this movie, they're not particularly egregious in this movie. I'm not saying that they're bad. They're really not. I really think that this is the start of that whole kind of movement. Or maybe not this movie particularly, but this, you know, it was a big factor in it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I just don't like that slasher direction that it went in. I just, you know, it went from the first one where he just like strangled or stabbed people because that was what he had available, to this one he's like, you know, using wacky tools in his environment and stuff. And I don't know. I think he would have just stuck to strangling and knifing personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall though, like the Halloween franchise doesn't have really many over the top kills like we see obviously in other franchises. It's still kind of low key in comparison to them as they get on in their franchises, because they get even worse.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's goofy ones every now and again.
Yeah,
but it's fair.
A low point for me is going to be what you kind of discussed earlier, is that we had the big, strong, you know, Laurie Strode protagonist, and they made her injuries more critical, really just to kind of like not have her be in it as much. And she was more of a helpless final girl than the strong one that we had in the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was just, I don't know. I don't know why they changed her character so much. Like, again, they had her like literally have like a mental breakdown to where she was like basically kind of like mentally like disabled for most of this movie. Like, she was incapable of like rational thought.
Right.
Which, yeah, I think it does her a disservice. I think she was stronger than that. And most of the other movies that she is in, she is not like that at all.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. All right. So how many butcher knives would you give this out of 10?
For this one, I will give it 7 out of 10 butcher knives.
Fair.
Again, you know, it's still up there. I mean, it's still a good movie. I mean, you know, I still consider it, you know, a good movie. It's not as good as the first one, but yeah, not fantastic either.
Yeah, mine's gonna drop down 1 point. I'm gonna go with 9. So I think if you watch the first one, you have to watch this one. It's the duology. I think it's just a very great companion. So they're pretty up there for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So the next movie we'll be discussing, because we will be skipping Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, because it's not part of the Thorn Timeline. It'll be in its own separate podcast, along with the Rob Zombie ones. So we're going to go into Halloween 4, which came out in 1988. So it's the 10-year anniversary. And it's, you know, Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers. So, I believe, starts off with Dr. Loomis. We find out he survived the fire as well.
Yeah, it's a casual like intro of like, oh yeah, everybody survived the explosion.
Right.
Really, it looked pretty bad.
Yeah, right.
We saw his face burning for like 2 solid minutes while the credits were going by. I'm pretty sure he would make it.
You know, until Halloween 4, we thought for 9 years Michael Myers was dead. Right. He's gone. never coming back. So,
well, and especially Dr. Loomis.
Yeah.
Like Dr. Loomis, there's no way he survived. Michael Myers, he'll probably come back in a sequel. But
yeah.
Loomis was dead. Nope, they're both back.
But with number 3, we probably didn't expect to see Michael Myers again.
Well, yeah, everybody expected to see him in 3, and then he wasn't there.
So,
right.
So we find out that he's, being transferred in an ambulance to go to a different sanatorium. And they're discussing, and there's, he's all bandaged up because he's a severe burn victim at this point. Still 10 years later, I can't imagine they gave him much skin grafts or anything.
Yeah, no, he was still like wrapped up like a mummy. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he was just burnt. Well, they show his hands.
Yeah.
His hands are still burnt. They don't actually show his face, but his
Correct.
hands are still like burn victim hands.
So they're discussing like, oh, he has a niece, and like that triggers him to wake up 10 years later, hearing he has a niece. So he kills everyone in the ambulance. He shoves his thumb through someone's forehead.
Right.
It's pretty hard to do, I think. And loses control.
Maybe he peeled his flesh back and used his thumb bone.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe that's...
So he escapes, and we see Dr. Loomis. He's back now. Half his face is burnt. He's wearing a glove like Luke Skywalker after his hand got damaged, his mechanical hand, to hide it from Yoda. And he has a cane, and he's decently burned, but still pretty good for a 60-year-old at this point in time.
Right.
So he starts chasing him down. He follows him to a gas station, and he sees him, and he goes to the mechanic. He takes his overalls. So we go, not his overalls, his coveralls. Like, all right, he's got his coveralls, and we don't see, we see the mechanic working on it. We see him getting killed, but then he killed like the waitress at the diner.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people he actually killed there, but he at least killed 2,
right?
Because they show 2.
And he gets into a truck, and Dr. Loomis, very, very gun happy, starts, God damn it, Michael, die, and starts shooting at him, misses him completely this time around, and we all of a sudden he's not there. He was looking at him the entire time, hit like all the plates of the diner, and it comes out, truck starts shooting him again, and the tow truck hits the gas pumps. There's also gas pumps there, causing an explosion. Loomis's car gets destroyed. Right. And we see an old priest kind of pick him up and talk about...
Oh, wait, hold on. You forgot the fact that explosion also took out the phone lines.
Yes. Destroyed all the phone lines to Haddonfield.
Right. Yeah. So there's only one place they come.
Right. That's it. Great infrastructure.
Right.
So they, talk about the evil and the drinking of evil, stuff like that with the priest. Meanwhile,
this is the first time we see Dr. Loomis drink on camera.
Yes, that's the full.
I'm pretty sure he's been drinking this whole time, but this is the first time we see him drinking.
Right. And doesn't he keep the flask too?
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure does.
So we, cut to talking about stuff like this, and they realize that, we hear about Jamie Lloyd, who is the niece of Michael Myers, and, she's had nightmares about him, and she doesn't know anything of who he is or anything like that. She's talking about going trick-or-treating. Her foster sister doesn't want to take her out because she's, has other plans. It's like, oh, sorry, I'm such a burden on everyone. Her reaction and all that stuff. And foster parents get upset. They have to go talk. And then, the foster parents go out to a party and leave their teenager daughter to babysit this, and has to cancel date with Brady. Which makes him frustrated because he's probably looking to get some at that point, because everyone gets lucky.
Yeah, he's also young,
right? So
everybody gets lucky on Halloween. Is that a rule?
I think so. I know that rule existed, but it has to be the rule according to. Hey, this is.
I should go out on Halloween.
Well, just gotta go ahead and fill Illinois if you can find it.
I think it's right next to Shermer.
There you go. So once again, it's Halloween. Jamie doesn't have a costume, so Rachel takes her to like a convenience store again, and help picking her out a costume, and she happens to pick out the almost identical clown costume that Michael wore in the first one. She sees the boogeyman. He grabs a mask. He takes the same mask, but now instead of being a painted William Shatner mask, it's just another mask. That happens to be the Shapes mask that he uses.
Yeah, I really got to say the mask in this movie sucks.
It gets worse.
Oh yeah, well, actually, it gets worse and then better.
Right,
but
yeah,
this movie is terrible. This is probably the worst mask in all. Well, in all of the Thorn timeline, this is definitely the worst mask.
Yeah. And Brady's there. He's flirting with this other worker there.
Okay, to be fair, he wasn't flirting with her yet.
No.
Now, okay, she comes in, right? And she had a date with him that night.
Yeah.
She was told that morning over breakfast that she would have to stay and watch the kid, right?
Yeah.
Now, she doesn't tell him. And again, her friend has to convince her to go to this store. She didn't want to go to the store because he was there.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I don't want to go get her a costume there because that's where he works. He's like, well, it's the best place to buy a costume. So he has to convince her to go there, right? She goes there, she talks to him, and she's like, oh, by the way, I can't go tonight. I have to babysit. Like, he was supposed to pick her up in less than an hour.
Yeah.
And he's pissed. And I think rightfully so. Like, if you know that you're not going to be able to go out somewhere and you don't call them and let them know as soon as you know, that's pretty shitty. Like, if you wait until an hour before, and he's like, well, when did you find this out? She's like, this morning. And he's like, and you're just telling me now?
Well, the phone lines were dead.
That's fair. The local phone lines still work. It's only the outside the town that doesn't work.
No,
still
phones
in
don't
the
work.
town.
That's
yeah, right. But no, because they got a phone call that morning.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think it's fair at that point for him to be pissed.
Right.
His reaction to it is that's not good. That's not fair. Him flirting with the other girl because of that, that's not good. But I think him being pissed off at her not telling him, I think that's fair.
Right. So she takes Jamie trick-or-treating. At that time, Michael breaks into the house, find pictures of Laurie in Jamie's bedroom, and articles find that Laurie Strode died in a car crash. So now we know why. It was a year ago why Jamie Lloyd is in foster care, because her mom is Laurie Strode and she's dead. Loomis arrives in Haddonfield looking for the sheriff that was there 10 years ago, and he's like, oh, he's gone. And we get the new sheriff and tells him that Michael Myers has returned. And he actually takes him seriously this time.
Yeah, sure does.
Meanwhile, this is where Michael goes to the power station and throws a worker into the transformer and kills all the power to the entire town because, once again, Haddonfield has this fantastic infrastructure in place.
Right, yeah. One set of phone lines coming in, one power transformer for the whole town.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Solid.
Then they realize that they have to do all the stuff again. The new sheriff and Loomis are driving around. Michael goes in the police station and kills all the officers. And then off screen, yes. And then we get ourselves a good old redneck lynch mob going after Michael Myers.
Right. Oh, you forgot how they realized something was wrong. As they were all sitting in the bar drinking, and some came on TV saying I think they said Michael Myers is back or something's going on in the town. And so they called the police station. He goes, oh, nobody's answering at the police station. Must be bad things happening. That's their cue. Yeah, bad things are happening. We need to go because nobody answered the phone at the police station when they called one time.
Right. And one of the guys was like, wasn't that your kid got killed 10 years ago?
Al. Yeah.
Or Earl. Of course, it's Earl. Anyway, so they're trying to go back to the house. They get stopped. They get picked up by the sheriff and Loomis. They get brought, to the sheriff's house where Brady is now cheating on Rachel with whatever her name is. The sheriff's daughter.
The sheriff's daughter. I don't remember.
I don't remember.
See, this is a mistake. He should not have done that.
Correct.
He was rightfully angry, and then he ruined all his righteous anger on being a shit.
Right. So they go in there, and she's only wearing a shirt. Well, duh. No wonder what's going on. So,
what does this shirt say?
Don't remember.
Cops do it by the book.
That's right.
She's wearing it for the whole rest of the movie. Come on, man.
Yes, the whole rest of her movie. Yes. So, she gets mad. Jamie kind of runs away and being chased by Michael. Rachel finds Jamie. I said they arrive there. They barricade the house looking for all the stuff. Loomis leaves to go look for Michael all the time.
Well, yeah, because he's like, oh, he's going to go back to his house.
He's going home.
Yeah, he's going home. I'm going to be there all white and varm.
Yeah.
Because you got to put that drunk in. I'm going to be there all white and varm. He's just insanely drunk.
Yes. The sheriff, it powers out. The sheriff has, the radio in his basement trying to get through. Michael gets into the house and kills, a deputy that's sitting in the chair. The sheriff's daughter's like, what? And he turns around and he's dead. And then he uses a shotgun as a knife, as you do.
Yes, he does.
And jams her up against the door and pins her through the door with a shotgun.
I can if you give someone an insane amount of strength, you could technically push a gun through their body, right? People are pretty soft and squishy. You could probably do that, but you can't make a gun stick through a wall. I'm sorry. It just doesn't happen. And even if you did, it would not hold a human body.
Correct.
It's not possible.
But if a knife could do it, a gun could do it better.
Apparently, yes. In this universe, the physics are different, so I have to digress.
So they, see what's going on. Rachel and Jamie go into the attic. Brady tries to fight Michael by himself, but he gets his head crushed in. Rightly so.
Yep.
They go on the roof.
What you get for cheating, Brady?
Right. They go on the roof, and she's lowering down with the world's strongest coax cable.
Mm-hmm.
And then
it looks like she got hung at one point.
Yeah,
she was fine.
Yeah. So Michael's attacking Rachel. She gets knocked off the roof, and she's unconscious from the fall. Jamie runs on the street screaming, trying to find someone. Finds Loomis. They take shelter in the school, and first they go to the school because that's safe there. Loomis gets thrown through a glass door. Which, after being blown up, should be nothing to him.
Yeah, exactly. He should just get up and walk away.
Yeah. So Jamie trips, falls downstairs. Before Michael can kill her, Rachel appears and subdues him with a fire extinguisher. And he just leaves because he goes, "Ooh, a fire extinguisher! I must be going now."
Yep.
So the alarm's going off because they broke into the school. Then the militia lynch mob shows up. They agreed to go to the next town in a pickup truck. And
the lynch mob's anger is immediately thrown out the window when they realize that, they might be hurt. We should go.
Right.
We should get out of here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen a good old boy just back down like that. That
right. And there's a couple of them, but they show another one like, I saw him in the bushes, and they all just open fire on this singular bush. They're like, oh, that was whoever. Oh man,
Ted.
We killed Ted. So they're driving, and we find out that Michael's under the truck, climbs and starts killing all four of the lynch mobs. Rachel takes the wheel, starts getting attacked. They throw Michael off. She rams him with the truck and sends him to like an abandoned mine area. So the rest of the lynch mob that wasn't killed, the sheriff and Loomis arrive. Jamie approaches him and sees this is the first symbol we get of the thorn on his arm. She touches it, and then Michael immediately wakes up from the touch, and then everyone just opens fire and shooting everything around him. And he kind of falls into like an abandoned mine. Did they throw the grenade in that time or no?
No, they don't show that whole like dynamite thing until the next movie. But yeah, that apparently they did that.
Right. So,
but in this one, they just show him all shooting. He falls, and then like the mine collapses.
So he's dead. So they get back. The foster mother done her Jamie a bath, and then she's attacked. And we see what happens. We see that we get the same point of view that we had in the first one. We see Loomis, looking up, and it is Jamie holding a pair of scissors. Very reminiscent of killing of there, and he goes, no. And he's going to shoot her immediately because he sees another evil, and then the sheriff stops him.
Yeah, because again, he's a fantastic psychologist to where, this poor young girl who's been through all kinds of trauma, like her parents died less than a year ago.
Right.
And now she's been through all of this death and destruction and horribleness, right? She's seen all these bodies murdered in horrible ways. And then so she reacts by like, lashing out at like her
foster mom.
And his first reaction is, I just need to murder her.
Right. Well, we can't have another Michael Myers.
Right.
So your first thoughts on this movie, was this your first time watching it?
I'm pretty sure.
You're pretty sure?
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen this one before.
Okay.
I mean, it's definitely a step down. I mean, it's kind of annoying. I mean, now we're moving past the actual like Halloween franchise and into just like generic slasher goofy territory.
Yeah.
Not quite as bad as it will get, but pretty bad. I mean, Michael looks terrible in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, like they put like shoulder pads in the coveralls, I guess to like try to make him more intimidating or something. Yes. But like it makes him look like he has no neck.
Correct. He looks like he's always in an upward shrug.
Right. Right. Like he's like Frankenstein with these big like shoulder pads, and the mask is just wrong somehow. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't look right.
It's because they made a Michael Myers mask for him as opposed to the inside out spray painted Shatner mask.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, whatever it is, it's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't look right. Yeah. I mean, just like, I don't know. It's kind of off putting about how like strange this movie is.
Right. That's fair. So, I mean, like I said, this is your first time seeing it.
Yes, I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay. So, I mean, did you think it was a worthy follow-up for 10 years later after number 3?
No. Well, no, I mean, 3, is totally different. I mean, it would kind of be like, because you're bringing Michael Myers back.
Right.
So it would be like for 2. But no, I guess so. I mean, if you want the franchise to move on, I guess it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they kind of resurrected them with like a goofy story. I mean, just the way that they introed it, like, oh yeah, it was a big explosion, but everybody's fine.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. I mean, just like a casual throwaway line in the very beginning, like, oh yeah, both of them came out of it, no problem. They're fine.
I mean, yeah, it's fair. Like I said, my first thought seeing this, at the time I saw this, it was probably like 97 at that point, 98. I thought it was good because I went through and watched number 3, and then I went to this, like, okay, they're returning a little bit to form. And on the rewatch, I will admit I struggle with watching 4 and 5 in the series.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
But I still rewatch it every year, so it's not horrible enough for me to steer clear of it. But it's one of those like maybe I'll occupy myself with something else while it's on type movies,
right?
So, lore-wise, we see him having the more of the need to kill family members.
Right. Yeah. And then it's like, again, that we introduced that with the second one,
right?
So where he had to, he wanted, and that one it was just he wanted to kill his sister because he wanted the whole family to die, right? But then this one we get to like, the whole family line has to die because Laurie Strode is dead already,
correct?
And he has to end the line, so he has to kill the only child that she had in order to stop the bloodline. I guess is what they're going for. They don't really kind of explain why in this movie.
Correct. They will get to it.
Right. Yeah, they will get to it. But in this one, they don't explain why. Just that's what he wants to do. Like, that's why he wants to kill her is because she is the blood of Lord. So it needs to happen.
Now, did you find it was an interesting ending point that maybe she took over the evil? That it was genetic, and that's why maybe he wants to kill the family?
I mean, I guess that's fair. I mean, but again, I mainly saw it as like, this is her being through a shitload of trauma, and if her, becoming that trauma helps her survive it is probably more likely than like this mystical supernatural evil, which they've only kind of alluded to. There hasn't been any kind of solid reason why, anything at all. Just that, he's have evil eyes from, the crazy Dr. Loomis screaming it. That's it. That's the only thing that we have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like they show like a mystical smoke or anything coming out or anything like that. It's just, this is how she reacts. This is what she does. I know that she's wearing the same clown costume and they harken back to like, that's what happened. But like, I mean, it could have equally just been her, trying to deal with her trauma in the only way that her brain is making sense of it.
I would compare this to the Friday the 13th where someone else took over the mantle. And that's what they alluded to in the New Blood after they kill. So number 5 of Friday the 13th, where it was a new person taking over the moniker of Jason Voorhees, essentially. And that's kind of feel like that's what they were leading up to at this point. This is 1988, so we already had like 6 Friday the 13th at this point in time.
Right.
But I mean, lore-wise, it's weird that he was weird woken when he found out he had a niece, which is a weird thing to discuss in the ambulance.
Well, I think he just woke up because that was an opportunity, because he had been sitting in the same hospital for a decade, and now they're moving him to another hospital, and that's a perfect way for him to escape.
But if they didn't say that, would he have woken up?
I think he would have anyway, because he's being moved from in an ambulance from one hospital to another hospital where there's only 2 paramedics. And the funny part is when the paramedics, there's only 2 of them.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when they pick him up, they put him in the back. There's one person that jumps in the back and one person that jumps in and drives. They immediately cut to both of them being in the back seat and the car is still moving. So they either have a, autonomous fucking car or no one is driving this car, because there was only 2 of them and now they're both back there and they both get killed. Maybe that's why they flew off the bridge.
Exactly.
Because nobody was actually driving the car. Maybe they're the idiot that like put it in cruise control and thinks they can go in the back because they think it's going to drive itself.
Now, do you think lore-wise, it would be interesting to at least allude to that Michael Myers killed Laurie Strode versus a car crash?
I mean, I think that would be interesting, but I think it would be more like they should have. Well, I mean, if you're going to bring Laurie back, you should just put it at that point,
right?
Where he's going to kill her. But I mean, that's fair. But I mean, the way that they introed this movie, it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because he's, a mummy that's essentially been sitting still for a decade. He wouldn't have gotten up to go murder people and came back and laid down in the same bed again. Like, that wouldn't have happened. I mean, it would have definitely been an interesting story. I mean, obviously, it's like, Jamie Lee turned him down, so they had to think of something else. But.
Right. All right. So I'll go with my highlights first for this one. Highlights for me, like I said, 3. At the time, I thought 3 was so out there. Obviously, a lot of people did, and we'll discuss that when we get to it. But I thought it was interesting as a good way for him to be back. And it's interesting that they brought back Dr. Loomis, like I said, where you see even more of a spiral into his madness. Like he's just hitting rock bottom at this point in time.
Right.
So from a character standpoint, I like that. You know, what highlights for you, though?
That's fair. Highlights in this movie. Jeez. Maybe the acid wash jeans that Rachel wore. Those were some pretty awesome jeans.
Did you have some in 1988?
No, I did not. I did not have acid wash jeans in 1988.
Okay.
They were around. They were like expensive at the time.
What about low points for you?
Low points, I gotta say, it's just Michael's look in this movie. He just looks like, I don't know. He looks like like a guy that's got like a hunchback or something, and he's like trying to look strong, so he's like trying to stand up straight, but his hunch is like pushing his shoulders up. So his shoulders are like even with his like ears, and then the mask is just all wrong. It just looks cheap. It looks weird.
Yeah.
It's just it's just all wrong. His look in this movie is just all wrong.
I mean, I bet they changed it because they made Jason Voorhees such a big, intimidating person because the people who play him were big, especially Kane Hodder, that they tried to beefcake him up.
Yeah, I mean, like the first one, man, he was just like a normal looking lanky guy. I mean, he really wasn't. He wasn't like built or anything.
Right.
He was just like he had just like crazy strength.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's fair. My low point is it's the little girl. It's Jamie Lloyd. I'm not saying that she's a bad actor, but she makes the movie hard to watch sometimes.
Well, spoiler alert, that's going to be my low point for the next one. This one is not as bad.
I mean, it's fair.
The next one,
that's fair.
Holy Christ.
All right, so for Butcher Knives out of 10 for me, I gave the last one a 9. This is going down to a 7 for me. I'm bringing it down 2 points from last one. How about for you?
This one, I'm going to bring down to a 4. This is going to be 4 Butcher Knives out of 10.
Oh, boy.
This movie is just ridiculous. I mean, yeah, the way that it looks, the way that it's like shot, just the kills, the craziness, the whole thing. It just brings it way down from the legacy that is 1 and 2 to this.
Okay. All right, so then you want to bring us into number 5.
So Halloween 5. So this one opens up, right where the last one left off, where they show the exact same scenes of them driving down the street and Michael being on top of the truck, trying to reach in and grab her. They stop. He flies off the truck. She hits him with the truck. He flies like towards the mine, whatever it is. And then all the cops get out and just shoot a lot. And he flies back, falls in the mine, and the mine like collapses around him. And then this movie adds a little bit where they run up and have a big block of dynamite. And they light the dynamite and throw it down into the mine. And of course, even though the mine like collapsed, there's a little tunnel. And Michael is able to drag himself through this little tunnel out to like the river that's on the other side of this. So the big dynamite explosion goes off. Michael is not in the explosion. He gets in the river, floats down the river a little bit, and then manages to drag himself out of the river, and then stumbles into like an old man hermit's house. Old man hermit goes, oh, and then it kind of cuts out to black, and then it goes like 1 year later. And I know it doesn't happen right after that, but I'm just going to say it now so I don't forget. Is that Michael? Yeah, he wakes up after a year, apparently being tended to by this old hermit man and his parrot, and he wakes up. He sees his mask, he puts his mask on, and just immediately kills the old man. Like, no thank you. No, I appreciate you taking care of me for an entire year. Nothing, none of that. Just immediately murders him and then leaves. But not before we see that he's got a little tattoo on his arm. which is the first thing we see of the Thorn, right? Obviously, at this point, we don't know what it is, and we just know that it's there. But in some covers of this movie, that is, or there's some versions of this movie that is the cover art is like literally the hand with the Thorn symbol on it. So anyway, so then we cut to that. So Jamie, the little girl that survived the ordeal in the first one by attacking her stepmother, is apparently fine. whatever supernatural evil infected her has worn off, but it took her voice away. So she's in like a mental hospital kind of deal, like a children's mental hospital thing. Only now she can't talk. She's completely mute. She can only like whisper. So she's there. She's apparently having bad dreams and stuff. I mean, not really surprising. So her foster sister, Rachel, who survived the first one, the fourth one, which is the first in this kind of series. So she, goes to visit her, and then her friend Tina and their dog Max come in, and they're all having a party, whatever. And then Loomis comes in to check on her. And then Rachel basically tells her, like, yeah, we know it's going to be Halloween, but your parents are out of town, and also I'm going out of town. So you're just going to be by yourself. And she's obviously kind of distraught from that. I mean, understandably so. Dr. Loomis, comes in in his normal drunk self. And at this point, he's just, checking up on her. He's not, doing anything wrong at this point. But, as kind of cut back to Michael, he's back, kind of going around. He goes to, what does he do first?
They're going to.
Well, I know he goes to their house, but does something happen before that to make Loomis think that he's still alive?
Other than her nightmares, because she says he has a connection, that Jamie has a psychic connection.
I mean, I know there's like a telepathic link, but she goes into like that weird like kind of seizure catatonic state,
right? But
that only happens like when he's attacked.
But she emulates putting on a mask as Michael did when he goes and kills Rachel.
Right.
So that's why Loomis is convinced he's.
I'll just say, because I know Loomis came walking in when Rachel and Tina were in the room. I was just trying to remember why he was there.
Because it's Halloween.
He's just checking up on her?
Halloween, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think he was just checking on her. Rachel, eventually, she's supposed to be going out of town. Her friend Tina kind of convinces her to stay. She kind of sort of wants to stay for Jamie, but she ends up, deciding that she's going to go to this party with her friend Tina. So she goes home to get ready. And then when she goes home to get ready, there's that's when the first episode happens, to where, she's having like a psychic link to Michael, and she starts freaking out, and then she starts like telling them what's going on, and then they call her to like tell her to get out of the house. So she like comes out of the shower, she's like still wet, and she like runs out of the house because they tell her Michael is in the house, which is true, but of course she doesn't see anything. She goes outside, nobody's there. The cops come, and this it's so off-putting, because this is the point where this movie loses. Is when the cops come out of the house, they literally have like this goofy like Abbott and Costello like music
Bing
routine,
bong, like
follows
the
them.
rubber band you put in your mouth.
Right. It's like do 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 woo. It's like this generic goofy little song, and these two cops are like trying to like pretend like they're funny. It is so off-putting. It like immediately kills this whole movie for me. But anyway, so she's like, okay, there's nothing in the house, everything's fine. Oh, the dog that was gone is now running down the street, and he's fine. Like, okay, everything's fine. It's close. Close call, whatever. So everybody leaves. She goes back in the house to get ready to start getting dressed. And of course, while she's getting dressed, Michael was in the house, hiding in the closet, which apparently the cops didn't check the closet. So yeah, he was hiding in the closet, so he comes out and kills her, and also apparently punches a picture of Jamie, because it ends up, you see it later. There's like a bloody picture. Anyway, so yeah, she's the first one to go.
Yes.
So then we kind of cut to Tina's boyfriend, or Tina and Tina's boyfriend, and this other guy are like trying to, like, they're planning this big party at a farm. That was the one reason. That was what the party that Rachel was getting ready for, was this big farm party. So they're going to go to this farm party. So they need beer to go to the farm party. So like the one guy works at the store, and so like her boyfriend, or Tina's boyfriend, is like this super cool like greaser guy, muscle car, right? Yeah, with this like old Camaro muscle car, and he's got these stupid looking like John Lennon glasses, and he's got like the big poofy like grease hair. Yeah. Anyway, the guy's like just a jerk. I mean, he just exudes jerk. So anyway, so he backs up to, they put all the beer in the trunk. And he gets back in his car, and, the other guy runs away because he's like scared that his boss is going to see him giving beer to this guy. So he's like fixing his hair in the rear view mirror. And then Michael comes out and like uses like a garden rake to like scratch his car. And so he gets out with a crowbar, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to get you." And he doesn't even swing the crowbar. I mean, like literally barely even like holds it back. And then Michael just grabs him and just just strangles him. And anyway, and then whatever, they just cut. He's dead. So then we cut to Tina is now all dressed and ready for the party, and Michael shows up to her house in the boyfriend's car. Right? Apparently he knows how to bring up the top of an old school convertible.
Of course.
Because he brings up the top, and he's not wearing his normal Michael Myers mask anymore. He's wearing this other mask that apparently Tina, his girlfriend, had gotten.
Like a wolf, like this mask?
Goofy, I don't know what it is. It's like bizarre looking. It's like an old, whatever. It's a weird looking face. So, like, she sees him in the car. She's like, trying to like show off her outfit or trying to get him to react. And he's like, he won't open the door. She thinks he's just being
which is on par for him.
Right. Yeah. The guy, like I said, the guy was a jerk. So I guess it's not all that wrong. And he eventually opens the door and gets in, and he's like, like driving like all kind of like crazy. And then she's like, "Oh, I want you to stop and get me a pack of cigarettes." And he eventually like, stops and squeals out on the road and backs up and lets her out to go to the gas station. And that's when Jamie has another one of her like flashes. She's like having like a seizure, and she's seeing through, I guess, Michael's eyes. I guess, or just having clairvoyance as to where he is. Anyway, and she seems like like
big woman, big cookie woman.
Big cookie woman who's like a woman with like cookies over her breasts. Like, I don't even know what the ad was for.
Right.
But anyway, so of course the cops immediately know where that is, and they show up in like 5 seconds. I mean, it's fast. I mean, she's still inside buying the cigarettes, and she's like barely comes out, and like 4 cop cars like immediately show up. And they're like, "Oh, if you're Tina, please don't move. Please stop." And so they like grab her and throw her in the car and go to leave. And of course, when she goes back to like, let her boyfriend know what's going on, who's going right. It's just kind of interesting that her boyfriend's name was also Mike. Yes. So she was like calling him Mike and Michael the whole time when that was actually his name. That might be why he didn't just kill him.
Maybe.
Because she was actually calling him by his name and like, kind of playfully playing with them, I guess. Okay, so yeah, she goes back to like the clinic for like, I mean, maybe like a second before she's like, "Yeah, all right, I got a party to go to. I'm out of here." So the cops give her a ride, like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the two, cops that have their own theme song, decide to drive her to the farm party that they were all getting ready for. So they drive her to the farm party. She gets out, and this big, teenage party. She goes in. She meets up with the guy who got her boyfriend the beer, and then her other friend apparently. And so they're all like, just hanging out and partying like kids do, whatever. So the other two, not Tina, but the other two, decide that they're going to go, mess around in the barn. So they go in the barn and they find some kittens, and they're all like chasing kittens around in the barn. And there's like all these like kind of, jump scares where like the one guy is scaring her, and all this goofy stuff is happening anyway. So yeah, eventually they decide to mess around. So Tina leaves them alone, right? Because obviously she doesn't want to watch that. So they're like, doing their thing, getting it on, and then Michael ends up coming up on them when they're doing the deed, and he stabs the dude with a pitchfork, like through his body, and he's down. And then she's obviously screaming, and she's attempting to to fight back, and she takes out the pitchfork from the dude and goes at him with it. He just like grabs it out of her hand. And then, easily just kills her too. So then Tina comes back later, to go in there, and she finds like a bloody cat. But she, looking around, and she eventually finds their bodies. And then she gets chased by Michael for a little bit, but she gets out and goes, and she gets out okay. So like everybody is running and screaming, because I guess that they understand that death is here now. So they're all trying to like run away and leave. And the cops were sitting outside the whole time. So they're like, going, hey, what's going on? And then Michael comes out and kills them both with the pitchfork. So then Tina comes by to get their help, and they're already dead. And then while she's walking out, she sees Mike, her boyfriend's, in the car. And she's like, oh, you're here, get me a ride, get out of here. And then, she finds out that it's Michael Myers, not her boyfriend, Mike. So then he's like chasing her around with the car. And at this point, I forgot to say, like, Jamie and her little slow friend
Billy
left left the children's hospital, left their like Halloween costume contest, or what, little goblin costume contest, whatever it was. And they ran the whole way from that clinic all the way to this farm that they somehow knew how to get.
Of course.
By themselves. No one stopped them. No one said anything. So they made it this whole way in this time. So they get there at this same time. So of course they're like, Michael's like trying to run over everybody with the car. And he mostly fails. I think he ends up clipping the little boy.
Yes.
He gets injured. And then she's like, chasing down Tina, chasing down Jamie. He doesn't actually get anybody. Eventually crashes into a tree. And of course survives, and he gets out, and he's going after him, and Tina ends up sacrificing herself, so she gets stabbed so that Jamie could get away. And then as they're running away, Loomis shows up again out of the forest, grabs Jamie, and then they, escape.
Michael, you gotta go where it all started.
Right, yeah. So yeah, he lures Michael back to his original family home, this childhood home again. So he brings her, the girl, there, and he, tries to lure him there. And is this, I'm trying to think, is this the one where he has all the cops like watching the house? There's like the SWAT team there and stuff. Is that this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was this. So he has all the cops ready. So he's like the SWAT team, and there's like 30 cops all over the place. Like, so they got the one cop upstairs, like with her in the bedroom, and I know that guy from somewhere. I don't remember where. He's a lot of like secondary characters in other movies. But anyway, you see him, you'll know him. So he's up there like trying to protect her. There's all these other, like I said, sharpshooters and SWAT people and everything everywhere. So they're all ready for Michael to show up. And of course, Michael doesn't show up, but then there's an attack at the children's hospital. So of course, Michael's at the children's hospital. So let's take every single cop that's here waiting for Michael and send them all, every single one of them to the hospital. You can't like do half and half, or
all or nothing.
No. All
except the guy protecting Jane.
Except for the one guy protecting her in the bedroom. Everyone else goes. Ridiculous. Anyway, so of course, predictably, as soon as they all left, Michael shows up, right? And then, Loomis, I don't know what he was even doing. He was like trying to like drunkenly convince him to like come get the girl because it's going to cure his rage problem or something. I don't know what he's doing, but Michael just kind of like, yeah. Michael just kind of picks him up and just like throws him through a wall, and he's just down. He's out.
Yes.
He goes up and, he finds the cop and her in the room, and they realize he's coming. So they're trying to like use this old timey ladder to like climb out the window. I'm guessing the house was from the 60s. So I think it was like one of those old fire escape ladders they used to have back in the 60s. And I think they were trying to like climb out the window with it.
Yeah.
And he like can't figure out how he's going to get out the window. It's kind of funny because he's get out my back. Get off my back. Hold on, get on my back again. I mean, like he doesn't know how to get down. He doesn't know what to do. I probably wouldn't either, honestly. But he's a cop. I would hope that he's like trained in some way. But anyway, so he can't figure out how to get down this ladder. And eventually Michael comes walking in. So he says, "Yeah, go down the ladder, Jamie." And she doesn't know what to do either. So she just kind of stands there. He gets killed. I mean, like immediately, right away. Michael like takes the ladder and like wraps it around his neck and then throws him out the window. He gets home and dies. Jamie gets scared and runs downstairs. She's like running all through the house. She eventually runs through like this laundry chute. She slides down the laundry chute in the basement, gets stuck because it's locked in the bottom. So Michael goes down there, sees that she's there, can't get the thing open. So he's like stabbing through the duct, and she's like trying to climb up, and he's like stabbing through it. He ends up clipping her leg, but nothing bad. So yeah, she ends up climbing back up and out. And then as Michael kind of gets down, it's going to get her. Loomis finally wakes up from whatever from getting knocked out and thrown into a wall. And he kind of grabs her and then kind of leads her into this other room. And as he's as he leans up against the wall and Michael comes in, he like drops this trap, this big chain trap.
He Scooby-Dooed him.
Right, yeah. Scooby-Dooed him, and then he like shoots him with this tranquilizer gun.
Yep.
And he like he was pretty good with that tranquilizer gun. He must have practiced because he got off like 5 or 6 tranquilizer shots in like 10 seconds. Like he literally did it. I mean, they showed him legit doing it. It wasn't just like off screen. Like he was good with that thing. He must have practiced. And eventually, Michael grabs the gun out of his hands, and he's not going to pick it back up again. He's just going to pick up a 2x4 and just keep beating him in the head until he stops moving. Yeah, screaming "die" just like that the whole time. So then of course, Michael is finally subdued. All the cops come back, right? Because they can only travel in a pack, I guess. So like they figure out that the children's hospital is fine. Let's all travel as a pack back to the house. So they travel back to the house. And like, oh, Michael's here. So they actually arrest Michael and put him in jail. And they go back to the prison or whatever. And then the prison, Jamie is there. But like I guess I gotta miss that. I didn't tell you, but the guy with these like black like cowboy boots,
steel toe, like steel toe on it.
Yeah. They show him like just his boots. They just show him like walking around the neighborhood. They show him like
he kicked the dog,
maybe. Yes, he did kick a dog. Well, that's how he got introduced. Is he like kicked the poor dog? Yeah. But yeah, he was like wearing like a big black duster and like a big black fedora. So, he was like Mr. Cool Guy back then, because this is 1989. Yeah. So yeah, that was like super cool back then. So yes, and he's got the same thorn tattoo on his hand that Michael has. Again, no real explanation why. They don't say why, but obviously there's some kind of link, apparently, right? So at the end of the movie, Michael is locked in a cage. Jamie sees him like handcuffed and locked in a cage. The cop says, yeah, he's here. He's locked up. He's not going anywhere. So they kind of leave and go in the other room. And then there's like all of a sudden this big ass explosion. And then there's all this like machine gun fire. And you see that this man in black had broken in and blown, the jail cell door open and apparently killed a whole shit ton of cops. And then that's where the movie ends. There's no like finality to it. It's just, that's where it ends. I did good. I didn't get his loss that time.
All right. So, what were your first thoughts? So, this is the first time seeing it too, I assume, right?
Yes. Yeah. This is my first time seeing this one. Yeah. My first time seeing this, man. I was like, okay, this is just cheesy and goofy until the cops came out of that house. And that goofy, like, little theme song that they had, and I was just done. I was like, everything after that, it was just so stupid and cheesy and bad. Everybody is just like screaming the whole time. Like, Tina's ridiculous. Like, the Jamie is ridiculous. Or goofy speech impediment. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, like, she miraculously just like healed herself and was able to talk fine. Like, she stuttered like one time saying Tina's name. Tina, and then she was totally fine talking the rest of the movie. Like, it was just why did they even bother putting that in there? I don't know. So yeah, I missed that whole part. But yeah, but again, it's just goofy. It's just a whole bunch of weird. They tried to add a bunch of like lore to this, and it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you could have went in any direction with it, and that direction just doesn't make any sense. And the only part that would kind of make sense, they don't even expand on, and that's like the guy with the same tattoo as Michael with the boots.
Yep.
Right? Like, that might make sense if you explain who that guy is or why he's like trying to help Michael or why has the same tattoo as him. Any kind of link there at all would be great, but no, he's just like this phantom. I mean, there's no link at all. It just
he gets credited as the Shape from that point,
right?
Right. So, would you rewatch this again?
Voluntarily? No. No, I would not. If I had to watch it again for, some other kind of project or something, sure. Would I voluntarily watch this again?
Yeah. Like I said, I probably watched this first time 97, 98. Like I said, after realizing this is part of the franchise, and I didn't mind it then. I said rewatch on the rewatches though, it is something. Once again, 4 and 5 kind of go hand in hand. Like, I have to get through this movie.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you count 4, you have to watch this one because it's basically the same actors and everything. It's like a year later. Right. It's just like 1 and 2.
So it is the sister film of 4. So yes, so I do rewatch it. Like I said, there's some good things, more bad things.
Yes.
Lore wise, what do you think they added anything lore wise other than the guy in the duster and setting up for number 6?
I mean, the Thorn tattoo, right, that he has and that the guy in the duster has, and then the guy in the duster existing is really the only thing. Or actually, there is that little piece where she goes up in the attic.
Yeah.
Right. And like, it was a weird. It was kind of a bizarre point. It was like this weird, like, kind of makeshift coffin up there, and that's where Rachel and that's where Mike, who wasn't even Rachel's boyfriend, it was Tina's boyfriend. I don't know why he was up there, but they were both like kind of like Rachel was just kind of sat there on a chair, and where Mike was kind of like hung up by like rope from the ceiling. And it was like kind of like a weird, like ritual-y looking thing. Yeah. That could have been interesting if they expanded on it, but they didn't expand on anything. It had Jamie's picture at the head of that coffin thing, and then like she weirdly like laid down in it.
Right. And she kind of lured him there and called him uncle. He took off his mask.
Yeah, she called him uncle, and he like backed off for like a nanosecond before he went after her. Oh no, he did take off his mask. Yeah, and he like took off his mask, and then she tried to like touch him, and he flipped out. But yeah, so I mean, that's really it. But there's no like they didn't expand enough on that for it to mean anything. So really, the only thing it adds for this moving forward in the next movie is the 2 tattoos and the man in black. That's it.
All right. Well, so
the whole psychic link thing is a MacGuffin that goes away when this movie is over.
I mean, they with the lore they did add that since she kind of touched the tattoo and went through that. There was that familial connection that was there, which is the only mention of it ever again.
Right, but in the 4th one, he didn't have the tattoo, or at least they didn't show it. They might have showed it in. I'm pretty sure the first time they ever showed it was in the very beginning of 5.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Some of these are hard to focus on, especially the 4th one. I was like, but I'm pretty sure the first time I remember seeing that Thorn tattoo was in the very beginning of 5. So they might have kind of retconned it, because they did show that whole part again of him getting knocked with the car and going, and then her going up to him.
I could have sworn they had at the school, where she went, that she was drawing the thorn symbol there in 4. Pretty sure the symbol came up in 4. I thought it was at the school, maybe 2.
No, I think that's the 6th one. I think that's the
little boy. Okay.
The little boy drew the thorn symbol on the back of his drawing of the family or whatever.
They all kind of merge together.
Yeah, I mean, they do. They're all equally as great.
Right. Well, are there any highlights for you in this?
He looks better in this movie. Granted, not much better, but he does look better. They took the shoulder pads out and they fixed the mask a little bit. I like Tina. I didn't like the way that she acted or screamed most of the time, but I thought she was interesting.
That she was a good pseudo sister replacement.
Right. I mean, like Mike deserved.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was nice. I mean, again, it was interesting. I mean, yeah, Dr. Loomis just continues that. I mean, this one I think this is the one where he's really taken that step. I mean, like the very
where
end
he becomes just as bad and crazy as the thing he's hunting.
Right. Yeah, like the very end of 4, he took that first step, like just immediately wanting to kill Jamie. And I think this one, he's over the edge in this one. He doesn't care who he's hurting along the way. He's just trying to stop.
Right. And for me, that's
he's using children as pawns and stuff.
Yeah.
He's definitely unhinged. Even the most optimistic view of Loomis at this point has him unhinged.
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm going to go into his character development. I mean, this really shows if you truly believe you're hunting evil, that you live long enough to become the villain, right?
You look long enough into the abyss, and the abyss looks back.
But it's the same thing. Like he became just as relentless as Michael in stopping Michael. Right. So, like I said, for me, that's a highlight, because it shows that story that it does happen. We could easily let evil corrupt him enough to that point where he just became so obsessed with it.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, taking the movie at face value, yes, that's fair.
Low points, obviously, the stupid, goofy music for those 2 stupid cops.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely the low points. And
well, I would just say the amount of times that Tina's name is screamed.
Yeah.
Dear God.
Tina!
I mean, it just some movies okay, I get it. You don't have to keep the screaming going. Scream enough for me to understand that, yes, you're terrified. I get it. I don't need that screaming as a soundtrack for the rest of the movie. Some movies do that. They just keep screaming, and it's like, I get it. Please stop. I don't want to hear it anymore. It's like a baby crying. Please stop the baby from crying. I get it. The baby's upset. You just have it cry a couple times and then leave it at that. I understand the baby's still upset.
Would you rather hear 8 more days till Halloween?
Oh, dear God.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, low points, Jamie and this, right? And the cops and that stuff. So, how many butcher knives would you give this? The last one was 4.
This one, I will give 2.
Wow.
2 butcher knives out of 10, because, as I said, as soon as that little goofy cop song happened, it went downhill from there, and it upset me.
I was at 6. I'm going down to 5. This one.
Okay.
Because I know somewhere in this franchise there's one or two worse than this one. I have to go down still from there.
Seriously? Yeah. Ugh. Well, and I haven't seen the rest of the. I mean, I saw like 1 and 2.
Oh, just wait! Just wait till
point.
number 8.
8
Resurrection.
Is that Resurrection?
Oh, just wait. All right. And for the last one, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. Like I said, for me, this is the first Halloween movie I watched, and it was enough for me to be interested in the franchise. So it's saying something, but not much. I mean, the plot. Do you want to do this opening plot? The first part. I know
it gets bizarrely dark.
Cultish.
I mean, it's like, it's bizarre. It's like, they kind of fast forward to where there's like this cult. They're all dressed as like, your typical
red
like
cloak,
weird cult people with the black cloaks with the red trim, and there's like a ritual altar and all this other stuff. But anyway, so there's like a girl giving birth. Okay. And like in this ritual thing. So they're like, she gives birth. It's obviously like a weird cultish thing. They're like, they take the baby and they like the cult leader, who's apparently the man in black from the 5th movie, is not letting her see the child. There's obviously like a sympathetic nurse that wants to, but can't, because obviously the cult leader
draws the thorn symbol on the baby.
Yeah, he draws the thorn symbol on the baby in blood with a knife that was bought from a flea market.
Yeah. Cultists don't always...
It's like one of those knives that they look scary, but it would immediately break if you ever tried.
Cultists don't have money sometimes, okay?
Yeah, apparently. they go for all style, no function. That's a cult. But yeah, that's essentially what it came down with. So anyway. So eventually, Man in Black, goes away. So the nurse brings the baby back to her, and she escapes with the help of this nurse. We find out that the Man in Black and Michael Myers have been like running this cult, right? Michael Myers has apparently been sitting in this cult for who knows how long, since the last movie, which was 6 years ago? I think this movie's 6 years later, right? Because it's 95, but I think they say it's 6 years later. So 6 years later. So Michael Myers has been hanging out with the Man in Black in this cult for 6 years. And so Michael Myers is like trying to stop them from leaving. He ends up killing the nurse, but the girl and the baby get away. He kills somebody else because she steals somebody's truck, because they're like the cult was like underneath a construction site.
Did you say who the girl is yet?
No, not yet. We don't find out yet.
That's true. But we know that they said it's Michael's baby.
Yes, they did. They did say it was like bizarrely Michael's baby. So she gets in the truck and she leaves, and she drives to like a bus station, to where she tries to call the police, and all the phone lines are down because, of course, this is Haddonfield, Illinois, which the phone lines, like, essentially if you breathe on them, like the phone lines break and you can't call them. Even 911.
Well, then she called into a radio station, though.
Right, because the radio was playing, and the guy gave the number for the radio station, and they're having, of course, a special about Michael Myers and Halloween, because this is the day before Halloween. Right. So she just tries to call the radio station, and she's like asking for Dr. Loomis's help over the radio station, right? And then she now gives her name as Jamie. So we know that this is the little girl that was from the last movie, and now we know that she was apparently kidnapped with Michael by the Man in Black when he broke into the police station. And then so apparently she was like forcibly raped by Michael Myers, forced to have his child, and then apparently now has escaped. Yes. So now Michael is now looking for her baby. So, she's like trying to hide in the bus station bathroom because, of course, Michael finds her. And she ends up escaping out the bathroom window. He finds her later in like a hayloft or something. I don't know where the hell that So anyway, he finds her, he stabs her,
Kills her, all over
on
the hayloft area.
Right. Yeah, and then she's like, "Oh, you'll never find that."
And he turns on the machine.
That's it. Right. Yeah. And so then, they kind of cut out. Of course, Loomis has retired.
Well, the DJ goes, "Dr. Loomis, I thought he was dead." And they cut to him going,
"Right,
no."
Yeah, they cut to Dr. Loomis, writing memoirs. His memoirs. Yeah. So he's got a thicker beard. And he's a lot calmer. He seems calmer now, right? Seems like he's finally relaxed. I think he finally got off the sauce. And then he realizes that until he hears this girl's voice on the radio, and he's immediately like, "It's Jamie. She's alive. Michael's back." Of course and then he goes back into it. So I'm pretty sure he just started drinking.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I'll leave that for my conspiracy theories later. His friend, who was the guy who ran the sanitarium where Michael Myers was held, the Smiths Grove Sanitarium. He was the guy that ran it. So they were friends apparently, even though when they showed them before, they were not friends. When they showed them, I think it was at the fourth one where he escaped. Yeah, the fourth one they showed him, and they were like at each other's throats, they did not like each other. But now apparently they're friends later on. Anyway, so he comes over and he's trying to get him to take over his job, which is odd because Donald Pleasance is obviously 20 years older than this guy. Why if you're retiring, why the hell would you bring a 20-year guy, a guy that's 20 years older than you that has to walk with a cane and can barely talk anymore to be your replacement? It's weird. Anyway, they had to get Loomis back in somehow. He immediately knows, this is, Michael's back. We got to go see it. So, they go to the scene of the crime. And she survived. Jamie actually survived the stabbing. And they bring her to the hospital. And of course she's unconscious, so he's just kind of waiting around to see what's going to happen with her. And then, Paul Rudd comes in at some point here. And he's, Tommy Doyle, he was the little boy that was being watched by Laurie Strode in the first movie. So apparently he grew up being obsessed with Michael Myers because, of course, he did see him for a very short period of time back then, but he avoided getting killed. So this is, however many years later. So he's obsessed with Michael Myers. So he's he's got all the newspaper clippings all over his walls of everything going on, and he's upset. He's living across the street from the Myers.
So let's say it's 17 years later.
Right, yeah. So he's obsessed with the house. He's watching it all the time. Anyway, and then there's, I guess we should. It's kind of bizarre. Who are the people that moved into the Myers house? I know their last name is Strode.
Yes, they are relatives of. They are relatives of Laurie Strode because they're both real estate agents.
Right. Yeah. He is Strode Realty, but is he his brother? Okay. I know they had the last name, and I know they were family, but they didn't really. I don't think they specified how they were family. But anyway, so they moved back into the Myers house essentially because the dad couldn't sell the house, so he decided just to buy it himself so that he didn't lose it. Whatever. The only thing you need to know there is the dad's a big jerk. The mom just kind of rolls over and does whatever. She's very mousy.
Well, the dad's abusive.
He's abusive. He's big asshole. Literally hitting his children.
His grandson a bastard.
The guy is an asshole. His son is kind of this burnout college kid, and his daughter is the smart college kid, but she had to move back in. She's got a son, right? Yeah, she had a son out of wedlock, which is why you're calling him a bastard or whatever. And she was trying to, better herself. So she moved back home to go to school to build a better life, whatever. I bring that up because Paul Rudd was watching her through the window.
He's watching people living in the Myers house.
Right. And she thinks he's kind of peeping on her, but really he's just watching the house. He was probably also peeping, but it was in addition to, not because of. So he was, of course, listening to this radio show too, because the radio show was about Michael Myers. So he was listening to the radio shows, but he hears about Jamie there, and so he like records it, and he's like playing it back, like trying to figure out where she was, and he ends up hearing like the PA from the bus station. So he figures out, oh, she went to the bus station. So he goes to the bus station, and he's like very, very awkward, I guess, because he survived darkness, so now he's weird.
Right.
So now he's like off-putting and awkward, like the rest of us. So he goes there and he's looking around, and he ends up finding the baby that she had stashed in like a cabinet in the bathroom. So yeah, instead of like bringing the baby to like the authorities or like someone that can take care of it, he decides to take the baby home with him, which is, I don't know. Again, this baby cries way too goddamn much, and it's just every time I hear it, I'm like, "Shut the fucking baby up! It's a movie. Stop."
Yeah.
But yeah, so he goes back there. Loomis is now, trying to. He's convinced that Michael is back, so he's like full on back into it now. And then where does it go after that? I know that they're going to have the radio guy is coming to their town to like do a live radio show.
Halloween was banned in Haddonfield.
Right. Yeah, Halloween was banned, and they're bringing it back finally. And like, the burnout son and his girlfriend are like the people that are trying to like bring back Halloween. So they're like his special guests or whatever.
The girlfriend talks about how her boyfriend lives in the old Myers house. He didn't know it.
Right.
We also find out that the grandson, Danny, is hearing the same voices. He was in Michael's room, starts hearing alluding to the same voices and getting groomed to be the next shape.
Yeah, he's like having flashes of the man in black, and he's saying like "kill for him" or whatever. So who's the first to die? The mom?
The mom is killed. Yeah, the mom is killed because she gets put in the
he goes back to his
washing
house.
machine.
Right, yeah. So he goes back to his house. He sees that people are living there. So he kills the mom because the mom was there. The dad comes home later when he's drunk with no dinner. And so, yeah, he goes downstairs, finds her in the washing machine, and then he gets killed. And then he goes to the college. And then, the DJ guy, like, goes to, like, I don't know, he decides they're going to move to the Myers house. And he goes out to his like van, and he ends up going into like a sanitarium van. I don't know how the sanitarium van got there, but anyway, Michael was in the van, and he kills that guy, then hangs it from a tree. And there's a very bizarre part where there's a little girl dancing underneath the tree.
It's raining, mommy.
Going like, "It's raining red,
raining, mommy.
It's raining red." Yeah, she's like singing that it's raining red, and then like the girl comes up to her, and she's like, "It's raining red. It's so warm." It's so bizarre. And of course, you look up and there's a dead body hanging from the tree, and it's blood. It's just disturbing.
Right. So anyway. Tommy convinces the Deborah and her son to go to his house across the street, and then that's where they see her brother and the girlfriend get killed while having sex in the house.
Of course.
And as Tommy Doyle goes into this whole lore exposition dump about the ruins, the curse, and that every Halloween
with some fantastic CGI to back this up.
Yeah.
I mean, that repeating GIF was top of the line in 1995.
Yeah. So he's exposition dump, and he's been studying this cult his entire life. Right, so he explains everything that he has to kill his bloodline on Halloween night, and believes that this is for the harvest, the druid curse, and that Jamie's baby will be Michael's final sacrifice.
Right, and so then they decide then they'll trying to think.
Yeah, then Danny goes into the house, not realizing it after he's summoned by the man in black.
Right.
And then Loomis is there Loomis catches up with him at the party. Right.
Yeah. Well, they eventually they make it back to the house.
Oh, and Tommy's landlady is part of the cult. Mrs. Blankenship.
Right. Yeah, they make it back to the house, and the cult like raids the house. So yeah, Loomis, the daughter with the son, and Paul Rudd and the baby were all in the house, and so the cult raids the house, and so they capture,
they drug him.
Or no, yeah, they drug him, and then they wake up, and they wake up later, and the baby is gone. And so then they decide that they need to go. And Loomis knows that, we have to go back to where it started. And that's not the Myers house anymore. Now it's the sanitarium. Because we find out that the man in black is actually his old boss. So, yeah, his old boss is the man in black. So he has to go to the sanitarium to end it. So then, he goes back to the sanitarium, and he walks right in. He walks right into his office. Like his boss's office, and then I don't know. The whole thing, this whole interchange is just so weird. Like they're walking down these super long hallways. So Loomis goes in with Paul Rudd, and he's like, wait here. And he leaves him in the middle of a hallway. And then he goes up into the other room, and they eventually, he kind of knocks Loomis out, and then it says, this is your job now. Like, you're going to take over my job. Blah, blah, whatever. And he leaves. And so then Paul Rudd decides to follow this other cult person down the hallway. And he ends up getting locked into certain other hallways. And then he finds Michael. Right? I know he does. Did something happen before that?
Well, yeah, Michael starts killing all the doctors.
Right.
Yeah, so Kara's sitting there, she's going to be sacrificed. The idea was for her son to kill her and for him to become part of it and to take on the curse as well. And there's doctors that are trying to perfect evil, and so Michael goes insane, just kills everyone else in the cult, all the doctors and everything like that.
Yeah, I guess it was just loose reasoning.
Right. All of a sudden he decides to kill everyone that he's been with for 6 years.
Right, yeah. So yeah, he kills everybody anyway, and he's trying to escape, and he meets up with Paul Rudd in the hallway, and Paul Rudd decides I have all these runes that can counter your Thorn rune. So he cuts his hand and smears blood on the ground, and then puts the runes in a circle around Michael, and it somehow stops him. And so they're able to leave. And so then, later on, Loomis and the man in black, his old boss, and Michael are all in this hallway, and they all do this bizarre trade.
Yeah.
Right. So where I don't understand, I don't get this trade because Michael had the Thorn tattoo on him, right? And then the man in black had the Thorn tattoo on him as well. And so then magically, the man in black transfers his tattoo to Loomis, but then he gives his clothes to Michael.
Yeah. So
instead of I would assume that Loomis and that guy would trade places, but instead it looks like they did a triangle shuffle. So where Loomis became the new Michael became the new man in black, and then the old doctor became the new Loomis.
No, the idea is Loomis becomes the cult leader. Now, big stipulation here, this is the producer's cut ending. That took almost 20 years to come out. The theatrical release ending is better, and it's not magical in any way.
Okay. All right. Well, what is that?
That ending is that Paul Rudd, because he's awesome, injects a whole bunch of syringes into Michael, so he starts bleeding green. He starts beating him with a pipe and just flashes and stuff, and they leave, and they meet up with Dr. Loomis, and they go, "Are you sure you don't want to come with us?" He goes, no, I have to verify he's gone. He goes back in there and he screams in English. The same scream from the producer cut, the original ending. But they couldn't redo it because Donald Pleasance died. So they never could do anything else with it. So the theatrical release is he's defeated and then the mask is just on the ground and Loomis screams out of rage and anger. And that's how it ends. It's very ambivalent of how it ends.
Okay. But you see what I'm saying, though, right? So we're like, okay, like the doctor, the old doctor guy, the old boss guy was the man in black. And then Loomis was obviously the psychologist, and then Michael was the murderer. And then when they switched tattoos, like Michael was wearing the man in black's clothes, which kind of insinuates that he became him, meaning he's the leader of the cult now.
It's a very ambiguous ending as well.
Right, but to me, this is what I took it at. I was very confused because it looked like they did like a triangle shuffle, to where it was like Michael is now wearing the fedora and the overcoat. He's wearing his own old boots, but he's still wearing the Man in Black's outfit as if he's the new leader of the cult. To where Loomis just has the tattoo on his hand and is not wearing the Man in Black's clothes, which to me would mean he's the new
because the doctor was wearing Michael's mask. Michael switched clothes with him and escaped. When he dies, that's when Donald Pleasance becomes the new cult leader. So,
right, but again, the way that they do the shuffle, it makes it look like Michael becomes the leader and that Loomis becomes the new Michael. So I'm like, the dude's like 75 years old. What the hell is he going? How is he going to kill people? He walks with a cane. It just it's just very.
Well, the producer cut is this. There's so much backstory that we could almost do horrible rewrites of this. And
well, hey, I did watch the one that was available to me.
I'm just saying though that this went through so many different scripts that there's so many different problems and so many different scenes and endings. Because there was a different ending for TV, there's a different ending for theater, there's a different ending for the producer's cut. It's all over the place.
Yeah, I was also reading that like when they were filming Halloween 2, they actually filmed new parts for 1. And then when they released 1 on television, they had a bunch of new scenes.
So I think the canon, if you will, of this, granted this is the last movie in this timeline, is that his mask is gone and either it's hinted at that Donald Pleasance gets killed by Michael or he's just gone and he screams out in rage. That's the canon ending versus the crappy ruins and magic and transferring of powers and all that crap.
Yeah, I said I did not. I was like, I didn't. I like it ended. I'm like, I was trying to figure out like what the hell.
Yeah, I remember when the producer's cut came out. It was like 2013. It was like 18 years later that it finally got the real release of light of day.
Well, that's the ending I saw, and I was very confused. I want to see the other ending.
I mean, other than the ending being different, what were your first thoughts on this?
I mean, it's cool to see Paul Rudd in like his first movie. Like it literally said like introducing.
Yes, chronologically, it came out after Clueless, but filming wise, it came before Clueless. So it was his first movie.
Interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. So yeah, it's interesting to see Paul Rudd in this movie specifically. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of just surprised at how it was better than like the 5th one. Because if you look at the ratings, they're lower. And it's way lower than 5. And I was just kind of surprised where I'm like, this is, I mean, again, arguably better than the 5th one, but the ratings are so much lower. It's just odd. I don't know if this is one of those movies that like the horror purists are going to get upset that I say that it's better than the 5th one, or I don't know. But yeah, it just seemed like a lot of people hated this one more than the 5th one when it's argued.
So you're going to hear this argument from the purists of this that you'll hear with Rob Zombie's Halloween. The lore. absolutely destroyed everything that made Michael Myers.
I mean, that's true, but I mean, it would go back further because they planted the seeds for this in the fifth one. I mean, you could arguably go back to say you planted the seeds for this in the fourth.
Absolutely.
So why don't they hate fourth and fifth one just
as
much as
they're low on the list? they're absolutely low on the list.
I guess so. I mean, again, I'm not a big fan of the whole cult aspect. I'm not saying that that's good. I'm just saying, as far as like quality wise and as far as coherence, it's better than 4 and 5.
But we're gonna have 4 and 5 as a special place because it's the return of Michael Myers. So it's bringing him back after what most considered the abysmal 3. So it's going to be in higher regard because of that.
Well, we'll get there. But I would say arguably 3 is not a bad movie. It's just Halloween.
Like I said, this is the first Halloween movie I watched. And I was 12, and at the time, it was enough for me to go, you know what? And I found there's more. I have to watch them all. So it has a weird place in my heart and mind just because it being the first, and it was kind of, we discussed, my first big foray into horror. I'm not saying it's good. I rewatch it. I too tend to enjoy it more than 4 and 5. I'm with you on there. But lore-wise, I don't think we need the whole cult. I don't think we need all that explained, that there's motive behind it. And then, yes, they laid the groundwork of it. But I don't think we could have done without the lore. I don't think being able to be defeated by, the producer of Ruins is good. The transferring of cult leadership is good. Passing down, like they're stretching to how to incorporate the Strode family or any else somehow related to everything else in this movie.
Yeah, no, all fair points. I'm just saying, it always strikes me as bizarre when like these horror purists like get upset about stuff because like you look at 4, it's bad. You look at 5, it's even worse, and they somehow hold on to like these movies were true. They're bad movies. Like, why do you care? Like, they're terrible movies. Who cares if the fucking lore was correct or not? They're arguably bad. And you get somebody else who makes a movie it's a better, I'm not gonna say well made, but better made movie that makes more sense and is better looking than these other movies, and they get angry because it doesn't follow the same. It's just bizarre to me. Why can't you just see the movie for what it is and not like put it as a part of something else?
So highlights for you though, kind of the fact it was better than 4 and 5.
I mean that there wasn't as so much like goofy, character acting in this one. And then there was some, don't get me wrong. I mean, like that DJ guy was so freaking annoying. But I mean, for the most part, the young son was just a typical burnout dude. Like his girlfriend was like your typical, kind of neo college 90s feminist, right?
90s.
I mean, right. Yeah. I mean, they were always like, kind of stereotypical, but at least there was a little bit, more to it, a little bit, more than, the goofiness of the fourth and the fifth one. You know what I mean? There was some like relatively normal characters in there, or at least understandable characters in there. It just wasn't as, I don't know if it's directed. I don't know what would make that happen, but it's just overall, I would say a better craft in this movie than there was in the other. In the 2.
All right. So what about low points for you?
I mean, low points. I mean, there's
incest baby.
I mean, yeah. I mean, well, that's at least kind of sort of interesting, but that's just, it's bizarre that it gets put in this movie. So where, I mean, like, I don't want to say it's like, family friendly or anything like that, but it follows a certain path, right? Most of them up to this point have just been like your typical slashers, right? They might put like a little spin on them or something here and there, but they're just kind of, slasher movies. There's not a whole lot to it. And this one goes like it's weird, bizarre stuff to where, like, you know, he's a cult like member who's somehow been hanging out with this cult for 6 years. Like, how did, like, the only time he's been exposed to the public in the last, 20 years, he's just murdered everyone he comes in contact with. And now all of a sudden he can, like, work with a cult? I mean, just bizarrely out of nowhere, you know, and then, like, again, like, Jamie
14.
is 14 years old. She was like 8 and 5, and this one is only 6 years later. I mean, why? Bizarre that you would do that. I mean, you could have made her any age. You could have made it in the future or something to, like, make her at least 18, so it wouldn't be as bad. But no, she's 14 years old. Make her give birth, like, you know, by force. Like, obviously she's being held against her will. And then she, like, you know, escapes after just having had a child. And then, and so I forgot to mention that she gets murdered in there. You know, like, she got stabbed and brought to a hospital, and then the man in black later on shows up and shoots her in the head because she served her.
Well, see, that was also in the producer's cut. In the theatrical, in the barn, she gets impaled on a thrasher, like, that sorts the hay in the bundles. And then she screams, "You'll never have my baby." And then Michael turns on the baler, and it just goes through her more.
Well, you need to label these things.
Now, I know, the idea was they were going to have the actress come back, but they decided to not because of the portrayal of everything. Because she was still young.
Yeah. But again, that's just weird. I mean, you could have had anybody. Like, I mean, it was different. It was a different actress. You know what I mean? Why'd you have to, like? Well, I guess you had to, like, put a family link in there or something. I don't know.
Did she look like Winona Ryder to you?
A bit. But I mean, that was the 90s, man. It was like mid 90s.
Oh yeah,
like Winona Ryder. That was the style at the time. That was like reality bites and singles era, man. It was like everybody wanted to be Winona Ryder.
Like I said, this movie was hated enough for them to wipe the timeline. You know, it didn't do well.
Okay, I don't. Like, how come the Hellraiser didn't do that? Like, Hellraiser kept going. Like, they had some terrible movies in there, but they never rebooted it.
No. So, butcher knives for you on this.
Butcher knives for this one. I mean, all the horror purists are going to hate me, but I'm going to say 5 butcher knives out of 10. It's not a good movie, but it's better than the last 2.
Yeah. What was I down? I was down to 4. I'd agree with 5. Yeah. I'll go with 5.
And again, it's mainly just the craft of this. They have, like, some characters that are, like, you know, interesting and not goofy caricatures. You know, like in the last one, last 2, really, everybody was just like this goofy caricature of themselves. It was, just not believable, very cheesy, very over the top. And this one, don't get me wrong, there's cheese and over the top, but it's not nearly as bad.
All right. So, do you think we can go through your conspiracy theories in about 10 minutes? All right. Let's go with your conspiracy theories. We're going to go into the bad child psychologist theories.
Yes. Now, this is it's going to branch a couple of times here, but my main one is that the first movie, here's what I think really happened. I think the first movie is Dr. Loomis's version of events. I think that is how he tells people that it went down. That is how he tells people what happened. Now, what I think is he's a terrible, terrible child psychologist. You can plainly see that. Anyone that has seen him in action knows that this is true. This is just plain old true. You don't, even if something's catatonic and they've done something terrible in their past, you don't just give up on them, call them completely evil, and then try to murder them as soon as they get out. No. That's not what you do. So here's what I think really happened. He sees a child that's catatonic, right? He's not really there to be a child psychologist. He's there to hunt, right? He's a child predator. So he sees a child that's catatonic. He doesn't move. He doesn't talk. He doesn't do anything. So he assaults him, right? And he continues to assault him, probably for a long time, right? Probably for 15 years. So what happens is that Michael finally gets a break and gets to escape. And he just wants to go home, right? He just wants to get out of there. Like, his whole life has been terrible up until this point. He's just been like assaulted over and over again because, again, he doesn't know how to react to the world. So he's just kind of, locked away, not moving, not talking, not anything. He finally gets a chance. He escapes. And so Loomis, afraid that he's going to finally talk again because he's moving and he's getting away, right? So he's obviously something's changed. So he panics. He thinks that this kid is going to tell the world what he's been doing to him, right? So his way of getting back at him is to tell people the story of this. Oh, he's going back. He's just going to murder everybody. That's what he's going to do. That's what he does. He's pure evil. I'm a psychologist. I would know. Right? So he goes back there. Now, here's where it branches off. Okay, maybe Michael did actually kill those people. Maybe he went home and he came, like a serial killer, hyper-focused on Jamie Lee because he was the first one that she saw. Maybe he did actually kill those, teenagers. Maybe not. Who knows? But if you go by my conspiracy theory, Loomis himself kills them and then frames Michael because, this is his MO. He came here to kill these people, when in reality, they were just the easiest people for him to kill. It's just a bunch of drunk teenagers trying to get it on, right? So he kills them one by one. So he frames Michael and then tells everybody that that's what happened so that he can freely kill Michael without anyone batting an eye and anyone judging him. And that's why as the movie goes along, he starts getting more and more unhinged, is because he knows that the stuff is going to come down, right? So he's drinking like crazy because his whole life is going to end. His whole life is going out of control. That explains why, as the movies go on, he keeps getting drunker and crazier because he's afraid that these things are going to come out, that his horrible things that he's done in his past to this kid to make this kid as bad as he is going to actually come out.
Okay.
And so the whole thing is him framing Michael for the things that he's done because he's afraid of getting caught for assaulting.
So you're calling the Thorn Timeline the darkest timeline, and that we have a movie being made with the unreliable narrator dictating what's set. Okay.
Correct. So we're like Dr. Loomis. Like, these version of events that happen in these movies is how Dr. Loomis is telling the stories. And everybody's believing them, obviously, because everybody believes that Michael Myers is this insane killer, right? So that every time he comes out, he just murders people. Which, I mean, again, a lot of these times, like, Loomis is the only one around. He's the only one that can explain what's happening or why. It's a good reason why, is that he's the one that's causing it.
Okay. I mean, that is you are the first person I ever heard with that take. That's you might be the only one with that. However,
again, I'm just saying, at best, he is the worst child psychologist that has existed in any movie universe. Okay, that's his best. But again, I take it one step further to where I think he is the one that is the villain, at least of the first movie, and probably the second.
What about in 4, 5, and 6?
Well, 4, 5, and 6 is all over the place. But as you see, he continually gets more and more unhinged as it goes along. Like in the 5th one, he's literally like tackling an 8-year-old girl to the bed, screaming, "You gotta help me find him! You gotta find him!" I mean, she's 8 years old, and he's like drunkenly screaming in her face, holding her down to a bed while a nurse is watching him. And she's like, Dr. Loomis, can you please stop? I mean, but he's like obviously out of his mind. Like I said, we actually see him drinking on camera at least one time. So, I mean, again, I think he's just, a crazed alcoholic that just keeps getting more and more unhinged. And this is at best. This is at his best. He's a terrible child psychologist that just is like, in a drunken haze through the rest of these movies.
At worst, he spends 33 years trying to cover up his transgressions.
Yeah. And okay. And then we go further. We go further at this, right? Now, what is going on with the girl in the 5th movie?
Same thing.
Right. What if Michael is just trying to save her from Dr. Loomis?
Okay.
He's not trying to kill her at all. He's not trying to kill his family at all. He's trying to save her from the same fate that he had at the hands of Dr. Loomis. So yeah, he might be killing those people, but he's not trying to kill her. He's trying to save her.
Interesting.
Huh? What do you think of that?
Every time there's a pause, it's the human side of Dr. Loomis coming through.
Right, okay. Probably. Or this Loomis isn't doing anything that's like, causing him to want to come out of it. So like when he escaped from the ambulance, like he could feel that Loomis was going after, because obviously they had that mental link. He could feel that Loomis was, going to try to assault her and was creeping around because he was creeping around in her room before he escaped. So maybe that mental link was like, oh man, Loomis is going to creep around. I need to go save her. And he's just, misguided and obviously killing all the wrong people because he thinks he's trying to save her, but he's trying to save her from people that aren't necessarily causing her harm.
Doing the best he can.
Her sister and right.
Okay.
And the best he can with his broken brain.
Very broken brain. I mean, I feel like Rob Zombie might agree a little bit with your theory.
Well, okay, obviously now Rob Zombie brings in the whole thing that like the kid is obviously like sexually repressed and is acting out of like a weird sexual perversion, right? And that is true. I mean, even in this timeline, you look at the first movie, that's what's going on. I mean, like the first time he killed when he was 6 years old, he had like a short circuit when he saw his sister, making out with somebody else. And whatever that short circuit was told him he needed to kill, right? So then later on, he sees kids like, where he sees a woman come up to him and kind of, come up to his door and he's like, oh, does she like me? Because obviously he's been alone for 15 years. He doesn't know what life is like. And then he sees like kids like, the one girl walking around in just a shirt but no pants on. Obviously it like, sexually excites him in some way and he murders her. The other one was like, the guy was like naked getting a beer from the fridge and he, killed him because he was afraid of what was going on. He goes upstairs. The girl like literally exposes herself to him. Again, he doesn't know what to do, so he kills her. But that girl, because she exposed himself to him, reminded me the most of his sister. That's why he put the tombstone in there. I mean, even in this timeline, there's still a weird sexual, version of his crimes. Whether, it's obvious or not, it's there.
Yeah. I mean, I can't wait for you to watch H2O and Halloween Resurrection.
Oh, I'm sure it'll twist it in a totally different direction, I'm sure. Yeah. But is this like a version of what happens in there? Do they like
Resurrection goes to his house. Let's just go with that. And sets things up. Or tries to set things up. Without spoiling anything for you.
Well, that's the next one, yeah. Yeah, so it's 1, 2, then H2O, then Resurrection.
We'll call it the Laurie Strode timeline.
Laurie Strode 2? Because there's 2 of those, yeah?
What?
Isn't the new one Laurie Strode 2?
So this is Laurie Strode timeline 1.
Okay. Laurie Strode alternate timeline 1, yes. Because in the official in the first Thorn timeline, she dies in a car accident? She dies in a car accident in 1987.
Yeah. So there is this whole other theory that I can get on this franchise as a whole when we get done to the last part.
Oh yeah, theories are welcome. I got to give you my crazy theories. For
I will discuss. I'll give you a little sneak preview. She fakes her death. Okay.
She fakes her death in 1987?
Yes.
Okay. So technically it could be the same time.
So I can argue that the entirety of it is one timeline.
Interesting. Even the Rob Zombie one? And 3? Even 3?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. I can Now, like I said, the newest trilogies makes the timeline, this theory, a little bit harder, but it's possible. So,
okay. I mean, all doors are open. I had mine for this one, so you can give me yours for the next ones.
So on that note, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So stay tuned for our next podcast. We're going to be releasing this a couple days after this one. We are doing these in rapid sessions, as these are multiple parts. We're not doing weeks apart. We'll be doing 2 a week, like we did for Hellraiser. So we'll be discussing part 2. And, the Halloween franchise confusing timelines. Like I said, this is going to include Halloween 1, Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, and Halloween Resurrection. So we will be putting that out in a couple of days. So in the meantime, this is Graveyard saying heavy check on the children.
And this is Salem saying long live the new flesh.